I'm driving to my parents' house in Vermont, and my hands won't stop shaking on the wheel. Not from fear, from rage I've buried for 17 years. They think I'm coming for a normal family dinner. They think I'm still the same Felicia who smiles through their insults, who pays their bills without complaint, who pretends not to hear when they call me a failure because I'm 37 and unmarried. What they don't know, I found the bank statements. I know about the $40,000 loan they opened in my name. I know my sister Veronica has been feeding my confidential business information to my biggest competitor. I know my mother has been stealing my identity for a decade. And tonight, everything ends. As CFO of a major investment fund, I'm used to high-stakes confrontations. But this is personal. This is family. The people who raised me to believe I owed them everything simply for existing. When my mother looks at me tonight and asks, "Where's your husband?" "Oh, right, like anyone would give you that." I'm going to smile. When my sister laughs and calls me pathetic, I'm going to stay calm. When my father shakes his head in disappointment, I'm going to set down my fork very, very gently. And then I'm going to say the words that will destroy their comfortable little world. Because what happens next isn't just confrontation, it's devastation. It's FBI investigations. It's courtroom drama. It's secrets so dark they'll make you gasp. It's watching entitled people face consequences for the first time in their lives. And at the center of it all, a woman who spent 37 years being everyone's ATM, finally taking back every single cent of power. Stay with me. You won't believe where this goes. My name is Felicia Hart. I'm 37 years old, and I'm the Chief Financial Officer of one of the largest investment funds in New England. On paper, my life looks like the American dream. In reality, I'm driving toward a family dinner that feels more like walking into a battlefield unarmed. The highway stretches ahead of me, autumn leaves swirling across the asphalt as I make my way north to Vermont. My hands grip the steering wheel tighter than necessary, knuckles white against the leather. I've made this drive hundreds of times over the years, but today, something feels different. There's a weight in my chest, a sense of finality I can't quite shake. I remember being 16 years old, standing at the cash register of a local grocery store, counting out my first paycheck. Most teenagers that age were worried about prom dates and college applications. I was calculating how much I could contribute to the household bills. My parents had sat me down the week before, explained with weary voices that they needed help. Just temporary, they said. Just until they got back on their feet. That was 21 years ago. They never got back on their feet. Instead, I became the foundation they stood on. By 18, I wasn't just working part-time anymore. I was juggling 2 jobs while attending community college, funneling most of my earnings back home. My younger sister Veronica was 12 then at that age, where girls need new clothes every season and school supplies and activities. Someone had to provide those things. Someone had to make sure she didn't feel the financial strain our parents radiated like heat from a furnace. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself that once I graduated, once I got a real career, things would balance out. But life has a cruel way of adjusting expectations. The more successful I became, the more they needed. Or perhaps more accurately, the more they felt entitled to take. The corporate world was supposed to be my escape. I worked my way up from an entry-level analyst position to CFO over 15 years of relentless dedication. 80-hour weeks, sacrificed weekends, relationships that withered because I was always too tired, too busy, too focused on proving myself. My colleagues respect me. My CEO trusts my judgment on decisions involving millions of dollars. I've negotiated deals that made seasoned executives nervous, and I've never lost my composure in a boardroom. But every time I go home, I become invisible. My family doesn't understand what I do. They've never asked about my work except to determine whether I've gotten a raise that might benefit them. When I try to explain a complex financial strategy or mention a successful quarter, their eyes glaze over with disinterest. What they care about, what they've always cared about, is whether I've found a husband, whether I'm planning to have children, whether I've achieved the only markers of success they recognize. I've learned to downplay my achievements around them. It started as self-protection. The one time I mentioned my promotion to senior management, My mother's first response was to ask if I could now afford to pay off their second mortgage. My father suggested I could buy them a new car since I was making so much money. Veronica immediately had a list of things she needed. Their love felt transactional, conditional on my continued usefulness. So I stopped telling them about my successes. I drove a modest car when I visited, wore understated clothes, kept my professional victories to myself. I thought if I made myself seem less successful, they might stop seeing me as an ATM and start seeing me as a daughter. Instead, they saw me as a failure. The cognitive dissonance is maddening. At work, I'm Felicia Hart, the woman who turned around a failing portfolio and saved the company $8 million. At home, I'm just Felicia, the unmarried daughter who's somehow disappointing everyone by existing. The whiplash between these two versions of myself has been giving me migraines for years. The Vermont landscape blurs past my windows, familiar and unchanging. I've watched these same trees cycle through seasons for decades, constant and reliable in a way my family has never been. The GPS indicates 15 minutes to my destination, and my stomach twists with an anxiety I've tried to suppress all week. I keep telling myself this dinner will be different. Maybe today they'll notice I look tired. Maybe someone will ask how I'm doing without immediately following up with a request for money. Maybe, just maybe, I'll sit down at that table and feel like I belong, instead of feeling like an obligation they resent having to acknowledge. But even as I think these things, I know I'm lying to myself. I've had this same hope for years, and it's never materialized. Still, some pathetic part of me can't stop trying, can't stop showing up, can't stop hoping that one day the people who raised me will see me as more than a checkbook with legs. The truth I've been avoiding sits in my chest like a stone. I'm not hopeful. I'm terrified. Because something feels different today. This morning, I received a notification from my bank about suspicious activity on my account. Nothing concrete, just a warning that made my professional instincts prickle with unease. I've been working in finance long enough to recognize when something isn't right. And then there are the calls I've been avoiding from an unknown number all week. The strange charges on my credit card I can't quite remember making. The feeling that I'm being watched, being used, being slowly bled dry by people who should be protecting me. I pull into the driveway of my parents' house, the 2-story colonial I've essentially been paying the mortgage on for the past 8 years, though their names are on the deed. The flower beds I paid to have landscaped look pristine. The new roof I financed last year gleams in the afternoon sun. Every brick of this house represents a piece of my life I've given away. I turn off the engine and sit in the silence for a moment, gathering whatever strength I have left. My reflection stares back at me from the rearview mirror. I look tired, older than 37. There are lines around my eyes that weren't there last year. Brackets around my mouth from holding in words I'm not allowed to say. I take a deep breath, grab the expensive bottle of wine I brought as a peace offering they won't appreciate, and walk toward the front door. My heels click against the stone pathway with a rhythm that sounds like a countdown. I don't knock. I haven't knocked on this door since I was a child. It's supposed to be my home too, though it's never felt that way. The door swings open and I step inside. The familiar smell of my mother's cooking fills the air along with the sound of voices from the dining room. For just a second, I let myself imagine this is a normal family gathering, that I'm wanted here, that I'm loved. Then my mother turns to look at me, and the expression on her face makes my blood run cold. It's not warmth. It's not welcome. It's something else entirely. "Well, well," she says, her voice dripping with a sweetness that feels more like poison. "Look who finally decided to show up." And in that moment, standing in the doorway with my coat still on and that expensive wine in my hand, I feel my entire body freeze. Because the look in her eyes tells me everything I need to know. Tonight is going to change everything. I set the wine bottle down on the entryway table, with more care than necessary, buying myself a few seconds to compose my face into something neutral. The familiar scent of roasted chicken and rosemary fills the house smells that should feel comforting, but instead make my stomach turn. I can hear the clink of silverware from the dining room, the low murmur of my father's voice, and underneath it all, the sharp edge of my mother's laughter. Come in, she says, though her tone suggests she'd prefer I turn around and leave. We were wondering if you'd actually show up this time. You're always so busy with that job of yours. The way she says job makes it sound trivial, like I'm still working that high school cashier position instead of managing a portfolio worth hundreds of millions of dollars. I shrug off my coat and hang it in the closet, taking longer than needed to arrange it on the hanger. These small delays are survival mechanisms I've developed over years of these visits. Traffic was heavier than expected. I say, which is a lie. I actually sat in my car at a rest stop for 20 minutes trying to convince myself to just turn around and go home. My mother walks ahead of me toward the dining room, her posture perfect as always. She's wearing the pearl necklace I bought her for Christmas 3 years ago, though she's never once acknowledged it was from me. She probably doesn't even remember. To her, gifts simply appear, money simply materializes, bills simply get paid. The mechanism behind these miracles is beneath her notice. As we enter the dining room, my father looks up from his newspaper. He's aged in the past year, more gray in his hair, deeper lines around his mouth. For a brief moment, I feel a pang of sympathy. Then he speaks. Alone again, I see. He folds the newspaper with deliberate slowness, his eyes scanning me from head to toe with the same disappointment I've seen my entire adult life. Felicia, you're 37 years old. Don't you think it's time you figured out your priorities? The words land like stones in still water, sending ripples of old pain through my chest. I've heard variations of this speech so many times I could recite it myself, but repetition doesn't dull the blade. If anything, it sharpens it. My mother settles into her chair at the head of the table, arranging her napkin with precise movements. A woman nobody wants is truly pathetic, she says as casually as if commenting on the weather. Her voice carries that particular combination of concern and contempt that she's perfected over the years. I saw Linda Morrison at the grocery store yesterday. Her daughter just had her third child. Third. And she's younger than you. I take my usual seat, the one that faces the window overlooking the backyard. From here I can see the swing set I bought for the neighbor's kids because my parents complained about the noise. I can see the garden shed I paid to have built. I can see the invisible price tags attached to everything in this house. That's wonderful for Linda's daughter. I manage my voice steady despite the tightness in my throat. I've become an expert at this. Smile, nod, swallow the hurt, keep the peace. My father isn't finished. He never is. You know, Felicia, your mother and I have been talking. We're concerned about you. He pauses, waiting for me to ask what they're concerned about to engage in this familiar dance. When I don't, he continues anyway. A woman without a husband and children has essentially failed at life. That's just the truth. I know it's not what young people want to hear these days with all this career nonsense, but facts are facts. He says it so matter-of-factly with such absolute certainty that for a moment I'm transported back to being 25. Back to the year I actually believed him. Back to the months I spent in therapy, trying to understand why I felt so worthless despite my professional success. Back to the night I sat alone in my apartment and wondered if he was right, if everything I'd worked for was meaningless, because I'd never worn a wedding ring. It took me years to unlearn that poison, years to understand that his definition of success was narrow and outdated and fundamentally designed to diminish women like me. But even now, even with all that therapy and self-work, his words still hit their target. The wound is old, but it never quite heals. I have a successful career, I say quietly, knowing even as I speak that it's pointless. I've worked very hard to get where I am. My mother waves her hand dismissively. Yes, your job. But what does that matter if you're going to die alone? Who's going to take care of you when you're old? Who's going to visit you in the hospital? Money can't buy you companionship, Felicia. The irony of that statement coming from her mouth is so profound I almost laugh. Money can't buy companionship, but apparently it can buy their tolerance of my presence. It can buy their roof and their food and their comfortable lifestyle. It just can't buy their respect. I force myself to smile that same placating smile I've worn like a mask for decades. It's easier than fighting. Easier than explaining for the 100th time that my worth isn't determined by my relationship status. Easier than watching them dismiss my feelings the way they've dismissed everything about me that doesn't serve their purposes. But something is different today. The smile feels heavier, harder to maintain. The distance I've always felt between us seems to have widened into a chasm so vast I can barely see across it. I look at my mother, at my father, and I realize with sudden devastating clarity that I could cure cancer, and they'd still ask me why I'm not married. I could become a billionaire, and they'd still see me as a failure. No amount of success will ever be enough. No amount of sacrifice will ever earn their approval. Because their contempt isn't about what I've failed to achieve. It's about what I represent: a woman who chose herself, who built a life outside their control, who refuses to shrink herself to fit their outdated mold. The sadness of this understanding washes over me like a wave. But underneath the sadness, something else is building. Something that feels dangerous and necessary and long overdue. It feels like anger. Before I can examine that feeling too closely, I hear footsteps on the stairs. The distinctive click of expensive heels that I recognize immediately. My stomach drops as I brace myself for what's coming next. Veronica appears in the doorway, and the smile on her face is sharp enough to cut glass. Veronica makes her entrance the way she does everything, as if the world exists solely to admire her. She pauses in the doorway, one hand resting on the frame, letting us all take in her appearance. Her honey blonde hair falls in perfect waves over her shoulders, salon fresh and gleaming. She's wearing a cream-colored cashmere sweater that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, paired with designer jeans that fit like they were custom-made, which they probably were. But it's the handbag that catches my eye. The new Prada tote in cognac leather, the one I saw her eyeing online 3 weeks ago. The one that costs $3,200. The one that showed up on my credit card statement last Tuesday as a family emergency expense that Veronica needed immediately for a job interview. There was no job interview. There never is. She hasn't worked a full-time job in over 2 years, not since she quit her position at a marketing firm, because her boss was too demanding and didn't appreciate her creative vision. What that actually meant was he expected her to show up on time and complete assignments. In Veronica's world, such expectations are unreasonable. "Sorry I'm late," she says, though her tone suggests she's anything but sorry. "I had to stop by Saks. They were having a private sale for preferred customers." Preferred customers. I almost laugh. She's a preferred customer because I pay her bills. She has good credit because I co-signed her credit cards when she was 23, and then ended up paying them off when she maxed them out. Her entire lifestyle is built on a foundation of my money, my credit, my silent and unacknowledged labor. My mother's face transforms when she sees Veronica lighting up in a way it never does for me. "Sweetheart, you look absolutely gorgeous. Is that a new bag?" Veronica does a little twirl, letting the bag swing from her shoulder. "Do you like it? I've been saving up forever." The lie rolls off her tongue so smoothly, I wonder if she actually believes it. Maybe she's told herself the story so many times that she's forgotten the truth. Maybe in her version of reality, she really is a successful independent woman who buys her own $3,000 handbags. It's beautiful. My father says, actually standing up to kiss Veronica's cheek. I can't remember the last time he stood up to greet me. "You have such wonderful taste, sweetheart. You always have." She does have wonderful taste. Expensive taste. Taste that costs me approximately $4,000 a month, though that number fluctuates depending on her whims. Last month, it was a spontaneous trip to Miami with friends. The month before that, it was a complete bedroom furniture overhaul because her old set was too college dorm for a woman her age. Never mind that I bought that bedroom set for her only 3 years ago. Veronica settles into the chair across from me, arranging herself like a queen on a throne. She sets the Prada bag on the table where everyone can admire it, where its presence serves as a monument to success she didn't earn. I stare at that bag and calculate how many hours I worked to pay for it. How many meetings? How many late nights reviewing portfolios and analyzing market trends? So, Veronica, my mother says, her voice warm with genuine interest. How's that new man you've been seeing? The one from the yacht club. I didn't even know Veronica had joined a yacht club. But of course she has. Why wouldn't she? Someone else is paying for it. Veronica launches into an animated story about her new boyfriend, some finance executive named Brad or Chad or something equally generic. She describes their dates in excruciating detail, the 5-star restaurants, the weekend in the Hamptons, the private wine tastings. My parents hang on every word like she's describing a fairy tale coming true. He sounds wonderful, my mother gushes. Successful, handsome, and he clearly adores you. You deserve someone who treats you like a princess. My father nods in agreement. That's what we've always said. Veronica knows her worth. She doesn't settle for less than she deserves. The implication hangs in the air, unspoken, but crystal clear, unlike me. Unlike Felicia, who's so desperate and pathetic that she can't even find someone to settle for her, let alone someone who recognizes her worth. I watch this performance with a detachment that comes from years of practice. I've seen this play out 1,000 times. Veronica is the star of the show, the beloved protagonist, whose every action deserves celebration. I'm the stagehand, invisible and essential, resented when I make my presence known. The architecture of our family has always had this design. She is the sun. I am the shadow. What about you, Felicia? Veronica asks, turning her gaze on me with a smile that doesn't reach her eyes. How's your love life? Oh, wait, that's right. You don't have one. The table goes quiet for a beat, that particular silence that comes right before laughter. I can feel it building like pressure before a storm. I'm focused on my career right now, I say, keeping my voice even. It's the same response I've given for years, the safe answer that doesn't invite more questions. But Veronica isn't done. She never is. You must be so lonely, though. I mean, coming home to an empty apartment every night. No one to talk to, no one who cares if you're there or not. Nobody wants you. She says it with mock sympathy, her head tilted in a parody of concern. I can't imagine living like that. It must be depressing. My father chuckles. Actually chuckles as if this cruelty is amusing. My mother shakes her head with a sad smile, the kind you'd give someone with a terminal diagnosis. And Veronica sits there with that sharp, satisfied smile, knowing exactly what she's doing. This is how it's always been. Veronica gets to deliver cutting remarks disguised as concern, and the family treats it as playful teasing. Sibling banter. Harmless fun. If I were to respond with equal cruelty, I'd be called sensitive, bitter, jealous of my younger sister's happiness. The rules are different for us. They've always been different. Something shifts inside me. It's not dramatic or sudden. It's more like the final grain of sand added to a scale, the one that finally tips the balance. I've been swallowing these insults for so long that I've forgotten what it feels like to speak. I've been funding this family's lifestyle for so long that I've forgotten I have the power to stop. Years of anger are rising up through my chest, like floodwater pushing against the dam I've carefully constructed to keep the peace. That dam is developing cracks now. Deep, structural cracks that can't be repaired. I look at Veronica's smug face, at my father's dismissive expression, at my mother's pearl necklace that I paid for. I look at the house I've essentially bought, at the food on the table I've funded, at the designer bag I'm still making payments on. And something inside me whispers enough. My mother leans forward, placing her hand over Veronica's in a gesture of maternal solidarity. Her mouth opens, preparing to deliver another blow, another casual cruelty wrapped in the language of love and concern. Whatever she's about to say, I can see it in her eyes. It's going to hurt. It's designed to hurt. And I realize with sudden and absolute clarity that I'm not going to take it anymore. My mother's hand tightens over Veronica's, and she looks directly at me with an expression that might be pity if it weren't so thoroughly laced with contempt. The moment stretches out, and I can feel what's coming, the way you can feel a thunderstorm building in the air before the first drop of rain falls. "Felicia," she says, her voice taking on that tone of patient explanation she uses when she thinks she's imparting wisdom. "I need to ask you something, and I want you to really think about your answer." I don't respond. I just wait, my hands folded in my lap, my face carefully neutral. I've learned that responding too quickly only gives them more ammunition. What's the point of living if you have no husband or children? The question hangs in the air like poison gas seeping into every corner of the room. She asks it so earnestly, as if this is a philosophical inquiry rather than a devastating indictment of everything I am. As if she's genuinely confused about why I would continue existing when I've failed to fulfill what she considers the only meaningful purpose of a woman's life. I feel something crack inside my chest, something that's been held together with wire and determination for longer than I can remember. This isn't the first time she's expressed this sentiment. She said variations of it for years, usually couched in softer language dressed up as motherly concern. But today, she's stripped away the pretense. Today, she's saying what she's always believed, that my life is pointless, that everything I've accomplished means nothing, that my career, my independence, my financial stability, my intelligence, my hard work, all of it adds up to zero because I haven't produced grandchildren or secured a husband. In her eyes, I have failed at the only thing that matters. I am a disappointment, not because of anything I've done wrong, but because of what I haven't done. My entire existence is an error that needs correcting. "Your mother's right," my father chimes in, nodding as if this conversation is perfectly reasonable. "You're being selfish, Felicia. A woman needs to provide stability through family. That's what women do. They build homes, raise children, support their husbands. All this career business might make you feel important, but what does it matter in the end? Who's going to remember you?" The word selfish detonates in my mind like an explosion. I sit here in the house I pay for, across from parents whose retirement I'm essentially funding, next to a sister whose entire lifestyle I bankroll, and he calls me selfish. The irony is so profound, it's almost abstract, like a piece of avant-garde art that's so bizarre you can't quite process what you're seeing. I am the one who provides stability. I have been providing stability for this family since I was 16 years old. I am the foundation, the load-bearing wall, the structural support that keeps this entire house of cards from collapsing. But they don't see that. They've never seen it. They see a woman without a wedding ring and conclude she's failed. They see a woman who chose career over traditional domesticity and conclude she's selfish. They see me writing checks and assume it's the least I can do, my obligation. My duty certainly not worthy of gratitude or acknowledgement. In their worldview, shaped by beliefs that should have died decades ago, a woman's worth is measured solely by her relationship to men and children. Everything else is window dressing. I could run a Fortune 500 company and they'd still ask why I'm not married. I could win a Nobel Prize and they'd still consider me a failure for not having children. The cognitive dissonance would be laughable if it weren't crushing me from the inside out. At work, I'm respected. My opinions shape million-dollar decisions. CEOs and board members listen when I speak. But here in this dining room, I'm worth less than nothing because I don't fit their narrow definition of what a woman should be. "I mean, honestly," Veronica says, and her laugh is bright and cruel. "What do you even have to brag about, Felicia? A job nobody even knows about. You work with numbers all day. That's not exactly impressive. It's not like you're doing anything important or interesting. At least when I tell people what I do, they're engaged. They want to hear about it." What she does. I try to remember the last time Veronica had actual employment. 2 years, 3. The timeline blurs because her unemployment has become so normalized in this family that no one even questions it anymore. She exists in a permanent state of between opportunities, or exploring her options, or waiting for the right fit. Meanwhile, I'm grinding through 80-hour weeks managing portfolios that could fund small countries, and it's dismissed as boring number crunching. Veronica's laugh rings out again, echoing my mother's earlier amusement. My father nods along his agreement, implicit in his silence. They're unified in this, a solid front of judgment and dismissal. This is what my family has become, or perhaps what it's always been, a tribunal that exists solely to find me lacking. I feel my hands begin to tremble in my lap, not from sadness anymore, not from hurt, from rage, from years and years of swallowed anger finally finding its way to the surface. Every insult I've absorbed, every cruel comment I've ignored, every time I've smiled through their contempt, it's all rising up inside me like a tidal wave. I finally understand with perfect crystalline clarity, if I continue to endure this, I will be crushed. Not gradually, not eventually, but completely and permanently. They will take everything from me, my money and my dignity and my self-worth, and they will never stop. Because to them, I exist to be used. I exist to fund their lifestyle and absorb their cruelty and accept my designated role as the family failure. Something inside me crystallizes, solidifies, transforms from something soft and yielding into something diamond hard. I've spent 37 years being the person everyone needed, the responsible one, the reliable one, the one who shows up and pays up and shuts up. I've bent myself into shapes that don't fit me, trying to earn love from people who are fundamentally incapable of giving it. Today that ends. Today I stop trying. Today I choose myself. My right hand moves slowly, deliberately toward the fork resting beside my plate. I haven't taken a single bite of food. My appetite disappeared the moment I walked through the door. The fork is silver-heavy, real silver that I bought my mother for her birthday 6 years ago, when she complained that her flatware was embarrassing. I pick it up, feeling its weight in my palm. Then, with deliberate slowness, with the kind of control that comes from years of high-stakes negotiations, I set it back down on the table. The sound it makes is gentle, barely a clink. Just metal touching porcelain with the softest of sounds. But something about the movement, about the precision of it, makes everyone stop talking. The room falls into a silence so complete I can hear the clock ticking in the hallway. My mother's mouth closes. My father's hand pauses halfway to his water glass. Veronica's laugh cuts off mid-sound. They're all looking at me now, really looking at me, perhaps for the first time tonight. And I smile. The silence stretches for 3 heartbeats. 4, 5. I let it build, let them sit in the discomfort of not knowing what comes next. My smile stays fixed on my face, but it's not the placating smile they're used to. This one has edges. Funny, I say, my voice conversational, almost pleasant. And where's your money, Veronica? The question lands like a bomb in the middle of the table. Veronica's face goes blank, her mouth opening slightly as if to respond, but no sound comes out. Her hand instinctively moves to that Prada bag, touching it like a talisman that might protect her from what's coming. "I'm sorry, what?" she manages finally, her voice higher than usual. "Your money." I repeat, enunciating each word clearly. "The money you used to buy that $3,200 handbag. The money you used for your trip to Miami last month. The money that pays for your apartment, your car, your entire lifestyle. Where does that money come from, Veronica?" She stares at me like I've started speaking a foreign language. I don't see how that's relevant. "Oh, right." I continue, cutting her off with surgical precision. "You don't have a cent. You don't have any money because you don't have a job. You haven't had a real job in over 2 years. So let me answer my own question. I've bankrolled this entire family for over a decade." The words hang in the air like smoke after an explosion. No one moves. No one speaks. My father's hand is frozen around his water glass. My mother's expression has shifted from condescension to something approaching alarm. Veronica's face has drained of color, her earlier smugness evaporating like morning dew under harsh sunlight. For the first time in my adult life, I've named the thing we all know but never acknowledge. I've pulled back the curtain on the comfortable fiction this family has maintained for years. And now that it's been said aloud, it can't be unsaid. Now, Felicia. My mother begins her voice taking on that soothing tone she uses when she's trying to smooth over conflict. There's no need to be dramatic about family, helping. The word comes out sharper than I intended, but I don't soften it. Let me tell you what helping looks like, Mother. The mortgage on this house, I've paid every single payment for the last 8 years. That's $217,000. My mother's face pales. My father sets down his water glass very carefully. The property tax is mine. The homeowner's insurance mine. The new roof you insisted you needed last year, $42,000. Mine. I'm not shouting. I don't need to. The numbers speak loudly enough. Dad's car, I co-signed the loan, and I make the payments. $460 a month for the past 3 years. Now wait just a minute. My father starts, but I'm not finished. Your credit card debt, Mom, the $23,000 you ran up and couldn't pay, I paid it off. Twice. Once in 2019 and again last year. The cruise you took for your anniversary, $8,000. I paid for that too, remember? It was supposed to be a loan, but you never paid me back. Neither of you ever paid me back. I turned to Veronica, who shrunk into her chair, making herself as small as possible. And you, Veronica, your rent for the past 2 years, $1,800 a month. That's $43,200. Your car payment, insurance, phone bill, credit cards. I've been covering all of it. The medical bills from your appendectomy, $15,000 after insurance. Mine. That designer bag you're holding, mine. The sweater you're wearing, mine. Everything you have, everything you are, is built on my money. The numbers keep coming because I know them all by heart. I've tracked every dollar, every expense, every payment that disappeared into the black hole of my family's needs. I've watched my bank accounts drain month after month, year after year, telling myself it was temporary, that things would change, that eventually they'd get back on their feet. The emergency medical bills for Aunt Ruth that I was told were life or death, I paid $12,000 for that. The water damage in the basement 3 years ago, $19,000. The new appliances, the landscaping, the furniture, Veronica's dental work, Dad's prescription medications, Mom's medical procedures, all of it. Every single dollar came from me. My mother's hands are trembling now. My father won't meet my eyes. Veronica looks like she might be sick. So when you sit there and tell me I'm selfish, when you mock me for not having a husband, when you dismiss my career as meaningless, I want you to remember something. I am the only thing standing between you and financial ruin. I am the foundation this entire family is built on. And you've never once said thank you. The silence that follows is absolute. It's the silence of a courtroom after a verdict. The silence of undeniable truth. They can't mock me now. They can't belittle me or dismiss me or pretend I'm the family failure, because I've just laid out in excruciating detail exactly who has been failing whom. I watch recognition dawn on their faces, watch them realize that the power dynamic they've taken for granted has just been exposed and named. For years they've treated me like I was lucky to be included, like my contributions were expected and unremarkable. Now they're seeing, perhaps for the first time, the true scope of their dependence. But I'm not done. There's one more truth I've been keeping from them, one more piece of my life I've protected from their exploitation. And by the way, I say, my voice steady and clear, I'm engaged. Veronica's head snaps up. My mother's mouth falls open. My father leans forward as if he's misheard me. His name is David Chen. He's a cardiothoracic surgeon at Mass General. We've been together for 5 years. We met at a medical charity fundraiser that my company sponsored. He's kind, brilliant, successful, and he loves me for exactly who I am. I pause, letting them absorb this information, letting them process that their narrative about my lonely, failed life has been completely wrong. We're getting married next month. Small ceremony, close friends only. None of you are invited. The last sentence detonates like a final explosion. Veronica actually gasps. My mother makes a strangled sound. My father's face flushes red. "You're what?" my mother finally manages. "You've been engaged for how long?" "Why didn't you tell us?" "Because I've been protecting him from you," I say simply. "I knew that if you knew about David, you'd find ways to exploit him the way you've exploited me. You'd suddenly have medical emergencies that only a surgeon could advise on. You'd have investment questions that required his professional expertise. You'd worm your way into his life and his finances the way you've done with mine. So I kept him separate. I kept him safe." Before anyone can respond, my phone buzzes in my purse. It's a particular vibration pattern I recognize immediately, my bank's fraud alert system. My stomach drops as I pull out my phone and see the notification on the screen. The message makes my blood run cold. "Large transaction alert, $40,000 loan approval in your name. If you did not authorize this transaction, please contact us immediately." My hands start to shake as I stare at the screen. $40,000, a loan I never applied for. In my name. I look up slowly, my eyes moving from my mother's guilty expression to my father's sudden inability to meet my gaze to Veronica's face, which has gone from pale to gray. And I realize this goes so much deeper than I ever imagined. I read the notification 3 times, my eyes scanning the same words over and over as if repetition might change their meaning. Large transaction alert. $40,000. Loan approval. In your name. My brain struggles to process the information, trying to find some innocent explanation. Some mistake on the bank's end, some glitch in their system. But I work in finance. I know banks don't make mistakes like this. I know fraud alerts trigger for a reason. And I know with a sinking certainty that makes my chest tight that this is real. My hands are shaking so badly I nearly drop the phone. This isn't about hurt feelings anymore. This isn't about being undervalued or dismissed or insulted at family dinners. This is identity theft. This is financial crime. This is a federal felony with prison time attached to it. Someone used my social security number. Someone accessed my credit history, my financial records, the most private details of my economic life. Someone filled out a loan application in my name, forged my signature, impersonated me to a financial institution. The violation feels physical, like someone has reached inside my body and stolen something vital. I force myself to breathe slowly to think through the implications. $40,000 is not a small amount. Whoever did this didn't just make an impulsive decision. They planned this. They gathered information. They knew enough about me to successfully pose as me to a bank's verification system. And then, like dominoes falling in my mind, other memories start clicking into place. Strange things I'd noticed over the past year but dismissed as my own oversight. The charge on my credit card for a furniture store I'd never visited, $800 that showed up last spring. I'd called the bank about it confused, but then my mother mentioned needing a new dining room set, and I'd assumed I must have authorized it and forgotten. But I hadn't forgotten. I'd never authorized it at all. The time 6 months ago when my bank called about suspicious activity purchases in Miami when I was in Boston. I'd reported my card as stolen, got a new one issued, thought that was the end of it. But what if the card wasn't stolen? What if someone who had legitimate access to my information was using it? The mysterious drop in my savings account last November, $3,000 that vanished, and I'd convinced myself I must have transferred to checking and lost track of. Except I hadn't. I'm meticulous about my finances. It's literally my job to track money. But I'd been so busy at work putting in 18-hour days on a major acquisition that I'd told myself I was just too exhausted to remember the transaction. I wasn't too exhausted. There was no transaction. Someone was stealing from me, and I was so conditioned to doubt myself, so trained to believe I was the problem, that I'd accepted responsibility for theft. The pieces assemble themselves into a picture that makes my stomach turn. This has been going on for months, maybe longer. Small amounts at first, things I might overlook or rationalize away. And now, emboldened by success, whoever is doing this has escalated to a $40,000 loan. The perpetrator isn't some stranger who stole my mail or hacked my computer. It's someone who knows my mother's maiden name, my date of birth, my social security number, the answers to all those security questions that banks ask. It's someone who has access to my personal documents, my tax returns, my passport information. It's someone at this table. I look up from my phone, slowly letting my gaze move across each face. My mother has gone very still, her hand frozen halfway to her wine glass. My father is staring at his plate with sudden, intense interest, as if the pattern on the china has become fascinating. Veronica is looking everywhere except at me, her eyes darting around the room like a trapped animal searching for an escape route. The silence that had fallen after my engagement announcement has transformed into something heavier, thicker, charged with a tension that makes the air feel hard to breathe. They know something has changed. They can see it in my face and the way I'm holding my phone in the stillness of my body. I stand up slowly, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor with a sound that seems unnaturally loud. I place my phone face down on the table with deliberate care, as if it's a piece of evidence that needs protecting. My legal training from business school kicks in. Don't discuss the details. Don't give anyone a chance to coordinate their stories. Don't show your full hand until you understand the scope of the crime. Who opened a loan in my name? My voice comes out quieter than I expected, but it carries authority I've developed over years of boardroom negotiations. It's not a question that invites debate or deflection. It's a demand for truth delivered with the kind of calm that's more frightening than shouting. The room falls into a silence so complete I can hear the tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway, the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, the sound of my father's breathing becoming faster and shallower. No one speaks. No one moves. I watch them carefully, reading their body language with the same analytical skill I use to assess whether a CEO is lying about their company's financial health. My mother's shoulders have tensed, her spine rigid with what could be fear or defiance or both. My father won't look at me, and that avoidance is itself an admission. Veronica's hands are clasped so tightly in her lap that her knuckles have gone white. They all know something. The question is, who did it, and who helped cover it up? Someone at this table. I continue, my voice still controlled but with an edge now. Committed identity theft. That's a federal crime. It carries a prison sentence of up to 15 years and fines of up to $250,000. So I'm going to ask again, and I want the truth, who opened a $40,000 loan in my name? My mother opens her mouth, closes it, opens it again. Her face has taken on a grayish tint that makes her look suddenly older. My father shifts in his seat, his hand moving to loosen his collar as if he's having trouble breathing. Veronica is staring at the table now, her earlier confidence completely evaporated. I wait. I've learned from years of negotiations that silence is a weapon. People will fill silence with confessions they never intended to make just to escape the discomfort of it. So I wait, standing at the head of the table like a judge preparing to deliver a verdict, and I watch them squirm. Veronica's eyes flicker toward my mother just for a second, a brief glance that she tries to hide, but I catch it. It's involuntary, instinctive, the way guilty people always look toward their accomplices for guidance on what to say next. But it's my mother's face that tells me everything I need to know. The guilt written there isn't the guilt of someone hearing about a crime for the first time. It's the guilt of someone who's been caught. Her expression cycles through denial, panic, and calculation so quickly that if I weren't watching so carefully, I might have missed it. And in that moment, I understand my mother isn't just aware of the fraud. She's at the center of it. My mother's face crumbles, and for a moment, I think she might actually tell the truth. But then she does what she's always done when confronted with uncomfortable reality. She reconstructs a version of events that absolves her of responsibility. Okay, yes, I borrowed a little money, she says, her voice taking on that defensive tone I know so well. But it's not what you think, Felicia. The family was struggling. We had unexpected expenses. I was going to tell you, I just needed to handle it temporarily until things got better. The word borrowed rings in my ears like a bell struck off key. I've spent 15 years working in finance. I know the precise legal definitions of financial terms. Borrowing requires consent. Borrowing means asking permission. Borrowing involves an agreement between two parties who both understand the terms. You didn't borrow anything, Mom. Borrowing would have required asking me. What you did is called identity theft. It's a federal crime under Title 18 United States Code Section 1028. My voice remains level professional, the same tone I use when explaining complex financial regulations to clients. You fraudulently obtained a loan using my personal information without my knowledge or consent. That's not borrowing. That's fraud. She waves her hand dismissively as if I'm being pedantic about terminology. Oh, don't be so dramatic with your legal talk. It's family. Family helps each other. I knew you'd understand once I explained. The casual dismissal of what she's done is somehow more painful than the crime itself. She genuinely doesn't see the problem. She doesn't understand that she's committed a serious felony, that she's put my credit rating at risk, that she could have destroyed my professional reputation and my ability to secure future financing. Or maybe she does understand and simply doesn't care because the consequences fall on me, not her. The severity of this, Mom, is that you could go to prison, federal prison, for up to 15 years. Do you understand that? I'm trying to break through the wall of denial she's built around herself, trying to make her see the reality of what she's done. This isn't about being dramatic. This is about the law. You forged my signature. You impersonated me to a financial institution. You stole $40,000. Stole? Her voice rises now, indignant, offended. How dare you use that word about your own mother? I didn't steal anything. I borrowed from family, which is what families do. And honestly, Felicia, you make so much money. Helping family a little doesn't hurt, does it? What's $40,000 to you? You probably spend more than that on your fancy apartment and your designer work clothes. The audacity of this statement takes my breath away. She's twisted the narrative so completely that in her mind, I'm the selfish one for objecting to having my identity stolen. She's weaponized the concept of family, turned it into a moral cudgel to justify criminal behavior. In her worldview, my financial success creates an obligation, and that obligation supersedes law, consent, and basic human decency. You're not understanding what I'm saying. I try again, though I can feel my control beginning to slip. This isn't about whether I can afford the money. This is about you committing a crime. This is about you accessing my most private information and using it to defraud a financial institution. This is about you putting my credit, my reputation, my entire financial life at risk, without even asking. Well, if I had asked, you would have said no. She shoots back as if this justifies everything. You always say no lately. You've become so stingy, so concerned with money. I raised you better than that. I raised you to understand that family comes first. The emotional manipulation is so blatant, so calculated, that I feel something inside me harden into steel. She's not going to acknowledge what she's done. She's not going to apologize or feel remorse. She's going to continue reframing this as my moral failure, my lack of family loyalty, my selfishness. And suddenly, I see her clearly, perhaps for the first time in my life. She doesn't see me as her daughter. She's never seen me as her daughter. I'm a resource. I'm a bank account with a heartbeat. I'm a solution to her financial problems, an answer to her needs, a tool to be used whenever convenient. The emotional betrayal of this realization hits harder than the financial crime. Because at least when strangers steal from you, they don't pretend to love you. They don't wrap their theft in the language of family obligation and maternal concern. They don't make you feel guilty for objecting to being robbed. I look at my father, hoping for some sign of support, some indication that he understands the severity of what's happened. But he's staring at his plate, his jaw clenched, saying nothing. His silence speaks volumes. He's choosing her side, choosing to maintain peace at the expense of justice, choosing to protect his wife rather than defend his daughter. And Veronica sits frozen in her chair, not speaking, not moving, but her earlier panic has subsided into something else. Resignation, maybe, or relief that she's not the only one in trouble. Her silence is its own form of complicity. She could speak up. She could acknowledge that what our mother did is wrong. But she won't, because that would require courage she doesn't possess. I'm standing alone in this room facing down 3 people who should be my allies, my family, my support system. Instead, they're unified in their exploitation of me. This isn't a recent development or a one-time mistake. This is a systematic pattern that's been operating for years, probably decades. They've turned family obligation into a business model with me as the sole investor and them as the beneficiaries. Everything clicks into place now. The way they've always treated my money as communal property. The way they've never questioned their right to access my resources. The way they've framed every request as a moral imperative rather than a favor. They've been training me my entire life to accept this arrangement, to believe that saying no makes me a bad daughter, a bad sister, a bad person. And I've been complicit in it. I've enabled this by continuing to pay, by swallowing my objections, by prioritizing their comfort over my own financial security. I've taught them that they can take whatever they want without consequences. That ends now. What else have you been hiding from me? I ask, my voice dropping to something quiet and dangerous. My mother's face shifts, and I see fear flicker across her features. It's not the fear of legal consequences or moral reckoning, it's the fear of losing access to my money. She realizes finally that she's pushed too far, that the golden goose is about to stop laying eggs. What do you mean? She asks, but her voice wavers. I mean exactly what I said. What else have you done? What other loans have you taken out in my name? What other accounts have you opened? What other crimes have you committed using my identity? I lean forward slightly, my hands resting on the back of my chair. Because I'm going to find out. I'm going to request a full credit report. I'm going to review every account, every transaction, every inquiry made in my name for the past 10 years. So you can tell me now, or I can discover it myself. Your choice. The room feels like it's shrinking, the walls closing in. My mother's mouth opens and closes, but no sound comes out. My father has gone pale. And Veronica, I notice, has started crying silently, tears running down her face without sound. They all know there's more. I can see it in their faces, in their body language, in the way they can't look at me. And I realize this $40,000 loan isn't the crime. It's just the one I happen to catch. I don't wait for an answer. I turn away from the dining table and walk directly to my father's home office, the small converted bedroom at the end of the hall where he keeps what he calls his important papers. My mother starts to protest, her chair scraping as she stands, but I ignore her. I'm done asking permission. I'm done being polite. The office is exactly as I remember it. Cluttered desk filing cabinets against one-wall boxes of old tax returns stacked in the corner. I've been in this room 100 times usually to help my father figure out some financial form he doesn't understand or to organize documents for their accountant. I've always had access. I've always been trusted here because I was the responsible one, the one who fixed their mistakes. Now I understand that trust was always conditional. They trusted me to help. They never expected me to investigate. I start with the filing cabinet, pulling open drawers and rifling through folders labeled with years and vague categories. My hands are shaking, but my mind is clear, running through the checklist I'd use for any financial audit. Bank statements, credit card bills, loan documents, anything with my name or social security number on it. It takes less than 5 minutes to find the first piece of evidence. A credit card statement from a luxury travel company dated 18 months ago. The billing name is mine. Felicia Hart. The charge is for a 10-day vacation package to the Bahamas all-inclusive resort premium suite. $14,800. I was in Boston 18 months ago working on a merger that required me to be in the office 16 hours a day for 3 weeks straight. I've never been to the Bahamas. I didn't book this trip, but somehow a credit card in my name paid for it. My mother appears in the doorway, her face flushed. Felicia, what are you doing? You can't just go through our private papers. These aren't your private papers, I say without looking up, pulling out another folder. These have my name on them, my social security number, my credit. That makes them mine. The next folder contains receipts from a furniture store, itemized lists of designer pieces totaling over $20,000. Dining room set, bedroom suite, entertainment center. All purchased 9 months ago using a store credit card I never applied for, but that lists me as the primary account holder. I keep searching, and each new discovery is like a punch to the stomach. Medical bills for people I've never heard of. Distant cousins. My mother's college roommate. My father's brother, who I've met exactly twice in my life. Thousands of dollars in medical expenses charged to accounts bearing my name. Home renovation invoices for work done on this house. The house I don't own but apparently finance in every possible way. A new HVAC system. Professional landscaping. Custom window treatments. The scope of it is breathtaking and nauseating. This isn't $40,000. This is easily over $100,000, maybe more. And these are just the paper records I can find in 30 minutes of searching. How much more is there? How many accounts have they opened? How many credit cards exist with my name and their spending? My father has joined my mother in the doorway now. "Sweetheart, let's talk about this calmly," he says, using his reasonable voice. His "let's all be adults" voice. "You're upset, and I understand, but going through things like this isn't helping anyone." I spin around to face them, a fistful of documents in each hand. "How long?" My voice comes out raw, stripped of the professional polish I've maintained all evening. "How long have you been doing this?" Neither of them answers. They just stand there, blocking the doorway like they're afraid I might try to leave. Or maybe they're afraid of what I'll do if I stay. Years. I answer my own question, the pieces falling into place with horrible clarity. This has been going on for years. All those times I noticed weird charges and convinced myself I must have forgotten authorizing them. All those times my credit utilization seemed higher than it should be. All those collection notices I received for accounts I didn't recognize and assumed were identity theft from some random criminal. It was you. All along it was you. The betrayal is so massive I can barely process it. These people raised me. They're supposed to love me, protect me, want what's best for me. Instead, they've been systematically exploiting me, treating me like an inexhaustible resource that exists solely to fund their lifestyle. I wasn't just undervalued or underappreciated. I was being actively drained, bled dry like a resource to be extracted until nothing remained. If I hadn't caught that loan notification today, how long would this have continued until my credit was destroyed, until I couldn't qualify for a mortgage or a car loan or professional liability insurance? Until my career was jeopardized because background checks revealed financial instability. They didn't think about any of that. They didn't think about me as a human being with limits and needs and a future to protect. I was just a money tree that would never stop producing, and they could shake that tree as hard as they wanted without consequence. "We were going to pay you back," my mother says weakly. "It was always temporary. We just needed help getting through some rough patches." Rough patches. I hold up the Bahamas receipt. A luxury vacation is a rough patch. Designer furniture is a rough patch. You had choices. You chose to steal from me instead of living within your means. "That's a terrible word," my father says, his voice hardening. "We're family." "Family doesn't steal from each other." "No, I agree. Family doesn't steal from each other. But you did. So what does that make you?" My mother's face crumples, and she reaches for the moral high ground, the last refuge of people who know they're wrong but refuse to admit it. Family doesn't keep score with each other, Felicia. You help when someone needs help. You don't demand receipts and payback schedules. You don't treat your own parents like they're criminals. What happened to you? When did you become so cold, so calculating? The manipulation is textbook perfect. Turn it around. Make me the villain. Frame my objection to being robbed as a character flaw, evidence that I'm not a good daughter, not a good person. Demand unconditional support while offering nothing in return. Make family a weapon that means I should shut up and continue funding their crimes. I feel physically ill. The word family has been so perverted in this house that it no longer means love or support or mutual care. It means shut up and give us money. It means your boundaries don't matter. It means we can take whatever we want because biology gives us that right. This is what abusers do. This is what exploiters always say. They wrap their theft in the language of obligation and tradition, making their victims feel guilty for wanting basic respect and autonomy. Before I can respond, my phone rings. The caller ID shows my attorney's name, Jeffrey Rosen. I've known Jeffrey for 8 years, used him for contract reviews and professional legal matters. He never calls after business hours unless something is seriously wrong. I answer immediately. Jeffrey Baum. Felicia. His voice is tight with tension. I'm sorry to bother you on a Sunday evening, but we have a serious problem. I need to tell you something immediately. Can you talk privately? I look at my parents still standing in the doorway, watching me with expressions of fear and defiance. Hold on. I push past them, ignoring my mother's attempt to grab my arm and walk out the front door into the cold evening air. I'm alone now, I say, my breath forming clouds in the November chill. What's wrong? I've been contacted by someone you need to know about, Jeffrey says. And what he told me changes everything. I stand on the front porch, the cold November air biting through my blouse, and wait for Jeffrey to continue. Behind me through the window, I can see my parents hovering in the hallway, watching me with barely concealed anxiety. I turn my back to them. What changes everything? I ask, keeping my voice steady, despite the adrenaline coursing through my system. Jeffrey takes a breath, the kind lawyers take before delivering news they know will detonate. I've been going through some estate records as part of routine due diligence for another client, and I came across something concerning your family. Felicia, did you know your parents received an inheritance from Rose Callahan approximately 7 years ago? Aunt Rose, my father's sister. She died when I was 30, and I remember going to the funeral, remember my parents seeming somber but not devastated. I also remember very clearly them telling me there was no inheritance, that Aunt Rose had been living on Social Security and had nothing to leave behind. They told me there was no inheritance, I say slowly. They said Aunt Rose died with nothing but debts. That's not true. Jeffrey's voice is gentle but firm. Rose Callahan's estate was valued at $412,000. Life insurance, retirement accounts, and the sale of her home. Your parents were the sole beneficiaries. They received the full amount minus estate taxes in February of 2018. The number hits me like a physical blow. $400,000. More than enough to pay off their mortgage, clear their credit card debt, establish an emergency fund, and live comfortably for years if managed properly. More than enough to be financially independent. Where is it now? I already know the answer, but I need to hear it confirmed. Gone. Based on the financial records I've been able to access, they spent everything within 24 months. Luxury purchases, expensive vacations, a boat they kept for 8 months before selling at a loss, high-risk investment schemes that collapsed. By mid-2020, the inheritance was completely depleted. I do the math in my head. Mid-2020 was exactly when my parents started having more frequent emergencies that required my help. When the requests for money became more urgent, more desperate. When I started paying their mortgage because they claimed they were on the verge of foreclosure. They had nearly $500,000 and burned through it in 2 years. Then, instead of living with the consequences of their choices, instead of downsizing or adjusting their lifestyle, they turned to me. They created a narrative of poverty and desperation designed to make me feel guilty, to make me believe I was their only hope. They lied to me. I say more to myself than to Jeffrey. They deliberately made me think they were struggling when they'd just squandered a fortune. Yes, Jeffrey confirms. And there's something else. Something you need to know about before you take any action. I brace myself. What else could there possibly be? Your fiancé contacted our office 6 months ago. I freeze. David? David called you? He did. He asked us to conduct a confidential investigation into potential financial fraud affecting you. He provided us with documentation he'd gathered, including suspicious charges he'd noticed on accounts you'd mentioned in passing timing patterns that suggested systematic exploitation and behavioral changes he'd observed in you over the past year. My mind reels. David knew. For 6 months, David has known about this and said nothing. I don't know whether to feel grateful or betrayed. Jeffrey continues, perhaps sensing my confusion. He was very clear about his parameters. He didn't want to interfere with your autonomy or make decisions for you. His exact words were, "My fiancée is the strongest person I know, but she's been conditioned to accept unacceptable treatment from her family. I need to gather evidence so that when she's ready to see the truth, she'll have the weapons she needs to fight back." Tears sting my eyes. That sounds exactly like David. He wouldn't steamroll me or make accusations or demand I cut off my family. He'd wait, prepare, and trust me to reach the breaking point on my own terms. What did he find? I ask. Everything. Jeffrey's voice is grim. Multiple credit cards opened in your name over the past 8 years. Forged signatures on loan applications. A small business loan for $35,000 taken out 2 years ago for a business that never actually existed. Systematic charges on accounts you didn't know you had. The private investigator he hired documented your mother and Veronica making purchases with cards bearing your name. We have security footage, transaction records, email communications discussing how to access your personal information. The comprehensive nature of it takes my breath away. This isn't a few isolated incidents. This is an organized, sustained campaign of financial exploitation that's been operating for nearly a decade. The total, I force myself to ask. Based on what we've been able to verify so far, approximately $247,000 in fraudulent charges, loans, and accounts over 8 years. That doesn't include the money you gave them voluntarily. $250,000. Stolen. Not borrowed. Not requested. Stolen through identity theft and fraud while they looked me in the eye and called me family. David wanted me to tell you something, Jeffrey says. He said when you found out, and he knew you would eventually, I should tell you that he's proud of you, that you deserve better than this, and that he's been preparing for this day because he loves you enough to let you fight your own battles, but not so much that he'd let you fight them unarmed. My phone buzzes with a text. I pull it away from my ear just enough to see David's name on the screen. I've always known you were stronger than they deserved. Now show them. I read the message 3 times, feeling something shift in my chest. David didn't just know about the fraud. He's been building a case, gathering evidence, preparing for the moment when I'd finally be ready to stop accepting the unacceptable. Jeffrey, I say, my voice steady now, clear and cold. I want to know my legal options. All of them. That's what I hoped you'd say. I'll have a full briefing ready for you tomorrow morning. But Felicia, you need to know that if you pursue this, it will likely mean criminal charges against your mother and possibly your sister. This isn't civil court. This is federal fraud. Are you prepared for that? I look back through the window at my parents, at the house I've paid for, at the life I've funded while being treated like I was worthless. I think about all the years I spent trying to earn love from people who only saw me as an ATM. I think about David, who saw my worth without me having to prove it, who loved me enough to protect me without controlling me. Yes, I say. I'm prepared. I end the call with Jeffrey and stand on the porch for another moment, letting the cold air clear my head. Then I walk back inside, past my parents, who try to speak to me, past Veronica, who's emerged from the dining room with red-rimmed eyes. I stop in the center of the hallway and turn to face all 3 of them. They look small, suddenly diminished, like people who've just realized the game is over and they've lost. I smile, but it's not a warm smile. It's the smile I wear in boardrooms when I'm about to deliver news that will end careers. Starting right now, I say, my voice carrying absolute authority. Everything changes forever. I walk back into the dining room with a clarity I've never felt before in this house. The room looks different now, smaller somehow, stripped of the power it used to hold over me. My mother and father follow me like shadows, their footsteps uncertain. Veronica is still seated at the table, her mascara smudged, her earlier confidence completely evaporated. I don't sit down. I stand at the head of the table, the position my father usually occupies, and I let the silence build until it becomes uncomfortable. Let them wait. Let them wonder. Let them feel for once what it's like to be at someone else's mercy. I've just spoken with my attorney. I begin, my voice calm and measured. He's provided me with some very interesting information about inheritance funds and systematic fraud. But we can discuss the legal details later. Right now, I want to make something absolutely clear. I pause, making eye contact with each of them in turn. Effective immediately, I will not pay a single bill anymore. Not one. Not your mortgage, not your utilities, not your car payments, not your credit cards, nothing. The bank account is closed. The ATM has shut down. This ends today. The words land like bombs in the silent room. For a moment, nobody moves. Nobody breathes. They're frozen in place. Statues of people who've just watched their world collapse in a single sentence. Then the panic hits. My mother's face transforms from shock to rage in an instant. "How dare you!" she screams, her voice shrill and breaking. "After everything we've done for you, we raised you, fed you, clothed, you gave you a home, and this is how you repay us, you ungrateful, heartless girl. What kind of daughter turns her back on her own family?" The accusations pour out of her like water from a broken dam, all the manipulative tactics she's perfected over decades. But they bounce off me now. I hear the words, but they don't penetrate. I'm inoculated against this particular poison. Veronica stands up so fast her chair tips backward. "You can't do this to me!" Her voice is high with panic, her carefully constructed composure shattered. "I can't survive without your help. I have rent-due car payments, credit cards. You can't just abandon me." What am I supposed to do? "Get a job," I suggest calmly, like most 32-year-old adults. She stares at me as if I've suggested she swim to Europe. "You know it's not that simple. The economy is terrible and I have specific skills that require the right position. I can't just work anywhere." "Then I guess you'll need to lower your standards." I turn to my father, who's been silent, his face pale and drawn. "And you? Dad, no arguments. No lectures about family loyalty." He clears his throat and I can see him calculating, trying to find the angle that might work. "Now, Felicia, let's not be hasty. I understand you're upset and you have every right to be. Your mother made some poor decisions and we should have been more transparent with you. But completely cutting us off? That seems extreme. Maybe we could work out a compromise. A payment plan, perhaps, where you what?" I interrupt. "Where you promise to do better. Where you swear this time it'll be different. Where you negotiate for reduced support instead of no support, no. I'm done negotiating. I'm done compromising. I'm done funding a lifestyle you refuse to adjust to match your actual income." "But we'll lose everything," my mother cries, and now there are real tears streaming down her face. Not tears of remorse or guilt, but tears of fear. Fear of consequences. Fear of having to face reality. "The house, the cars, everything, you're going to let us become homeless. Your own parents. You received $400,000 7 years ago," I say quietly. "You could have paid off this house entirely and had money left over. You made choices. Now you get to live with them." My father's face goes gray. "How did you—" "I know everything." I cut him off. "The inheritance you said didn't exist. The fraudulent accounts you've opened in my name. All of it. And here's what's going to happen next. I'm filing a police report for identity theft. I'm freezing my credit. I'm disputing every fraudulent charge and loan. And whatever legal consequences follow from that are entirely your responsibility." None of them apologize. That's what strikes me most forcefully in this moment. Even now, faced with losing everything, not one of them says, "I'm sorry." They don't apologize for stealing from me, for lying to me, for treating me like an object that exists solely for their benefit. They only express panic about losing access to my money. The distinction is crystal clear now, sharp as broken glass. They don't love me. They love what I provide. I'm not their daughter. I'm their pension plan, their insurance policy, their unlimited credit card. The relationship has always been transactional. I was just too close to see it. And strangely, understanding this brings a sense of liberation. I've spent decades trying to earn their love, trying to be good enough, successful enough, generous enough to deserve their affection. But you can't earn what people are incapable of giving. You can't work hard enough to make someone see your value when they've decided you don't have any. For the first time in my life, I feel myself regaining control of my own existence. The power dynamic that's defined my relationship with this family for 37 years has just inverted. They're not the authorities dispensing judgment anymore. I'm not the failure begging for scraps of approval. I'm the one holding all the cards, and I'm finally willing to play them. "You can't do this," my mother says again, but her voice has lost its strength. She sounds desperate now, grasping. "We're family. Family doesn't abandon each other. Family helps. Family doesn't steal from each other either," I reply. But here we are. Before anyone can respond, the lights go out. The sudden darkness is complete disorienting. For a moment, there's only shocked silence and the sound of breathing. Then I hear it, the distinct clatter of a phone hitting hardwood floor, followed by Veronica's sharp gasp. "No, no, no," she whispers in the darkness, and there's something in her voice that's different from the earlier panic. This is a new fear, a deeper terror. My eyes adjust slowly to the dim light coming through the windows. I can make out shapes, shadows. Veronica is on her hands and knees, scrambling for her phone. The screen is lit up, casting her face in a pale blue glow that makes her look ghostly. And in that light, I see her expression clearly. It's not just panic anymore. It's guilt. It's the look of someone whose worst secret is about to be exposed. "Veronica?" I say slowly. "Who were you texting?" She doesn't answer. She just clutches the phone to her chest, her whole body trembling. My mother moves toward her. "Sweetheart, what's wrong? Why did the power go out?" But I already know. The power didn't go out because of an electrical failure. Someone cut it deliberately. And whoever did it wanted Veronica's phone to be visible in the darkness. Someone wanted me to see what she's been hiding. I move before Veronica can react, crossing the dark room in 3 quick steps and pulling the phone from her hands. She tries to hold on, but I'm stronger, fueled by adrenaline and months of suppressed rage. The phone comes free, and I step back, angling the screen so I can read it in the dim light. The message at the top of the thread is still visible. She suspects. Don't contact me anymore. But it's the name attached to those words that makes my blood freeze in my veins. Mark Ellison. I know that name. I know it because Mark Ellison is one of the most aggressive competitors in Boston's finance industry, a man who's undercut 3 of my major deals in the past 18 months. He works for Crestmont Capital, our direct rival, and he's built his reputation on an uncanny ability to anticipate his competitors' moves and counter them before they can execute. I've wondered how he does it, how he always seems to be one step ahead, how he knows which clients to target, which strategies to counter, which weaknesses to exploit. Now I know. He had a source. He had my sister. I scroll up through the message thread with trembling fingers, and each new text I read is like another knife between my ribs. The conversation goes back months, maybe longer. The messages from Veronica are casual, almost flirtatious. The ones from Mark are calculated, manipulative, exactly what you'd expect from someone recruiting an inside source. "Did you get the client list?" he asks in one message from 3 months ago. "Yes, sending now," Veronica responds. "The Pemberton account is closing next week. Big investment over 20M. My stomach turns. The Pemberton account was supposed to be one of my biggest wins of the year. A $23 million portfolio transfer that would have cemented my reputation and secured my position as CFO. Instead, at the last minute, Pemberton went with Crestmont Capital, with Mark Ellison. I thought it was bad luck. I thought I'd miscalculated the client's needs. But no. I was sabotaged by my own sister who sold my professional secrets for whatever Mark was paying her. I keep scrolling. The evidence is damning and comprehensive. Investment strategies I'd discussed at family dinners mentioned in passing, thinking it didn't matter. Because who would care about technical financial details? Client names, acquisition targets, merger discussions that were supposed to be confidential. All of it passed from Veronica to Mark like she was handing over grocery lists. "What's the deal with the Henderson merger?" Mark asks in another thread. "She's worried about the Q3 projections," Veronica responds. "Thinks the company is overvalued. She's going to recommend pulling out." The Henderson merger. We did pull out based on my analysis. 2 weeks later, Crestmont Capital swept in with a competing offer and made a fortune when the company's value soared. I looked incompetent. My CEO questioned my judgment. And all because my sister was feeding our competitor my confidential analysis. This isn't just family betrayal. This is industrial espionage. This is a felony on multiple levels. Veronica sold out my career, my reputation, my professional future for what? Money attention from a man who was using her. How much? I ask, my voice barely above a whisper in the darkness. How much did he pay you to destroy me? Veronica is crying now, full sobs that shake her whole body. It wasn't like that. He said he just wanted to understand the market better. He said he loved me, that we were going to be together. I didn't know he was using the information to hurt you. I swear, Felicia, I didn't know. You didn't know, I repeat, incredulous. You're not stupid, Veronica. You knew exactly what you were doing. You gave him client lists, strategy documents, confidential communications. You knew he was my competitor. What did you think he was going to do with that information? Frame it and hang it on his wall. The lights flicker back on, suddenly bright and harsh after the darkness. Everyone looks pale and shocked in the unforgiving light. My mother has her hand over her mouth. My father is staring at Veronica like he's never seen her before. There's more, isn't there? I say, still scrolling through the messages. This isn't just about market strategy. You gave him personal information too. The messages confirm it. My social security number. My mother's maiden name, the name of my first pet, all the security questions that banks ask, all the personal data that makes identity theft possible. Veronica handed it all over like she was sharing recipes. He said he needed it for background research, Veronica whispers. He said he was trying to understand your psychology as a competitor. I thought it was just business research. Business research, I repeat flatly. You gave a stranger my social security number for business research. I turn to my father, who's been standing silent through all of this, and I see something in his expression that makes my chest tighten. It's not shock. It's not confusion. It's resignation. The look of someone who's been carrying a secret and is relieved it's finally out. You knew, I say, and it's not a question. He closes his eyes, and when he opens them again, they're wet with tears. Not about Mark. I swear I didn't know about that. But the credit cards, the loans in your name. I knew. I found the documents 2 years ago. I saw what your mother was doing. The admission hangs in the air like poison gas. 2 years. He's known for 2 years that his wife was committing identity fraud against their daughter, and he said nothing. I confronted her. He continues, his voice breaking. I told her it was wrong, that she had to stop, that she had to tell you. But she said it was just temporary, that things would get better, that you'd never find out. And I let her convince me. I was afraid of the fight, afraid of what would happen if we lost you. So I stayed quiet. I chose the easy path instead of the right one. He's crying openly now, but I feel nothing looking at him. No sympathy, no forgiveness. Just a vast emptiness where my respect for my father used to be. You chose Mom's comfort over my safety, I say. You chose to avoid conflict over protecting your daughter. For 2 years, you watched her steal from me, drain my accounts, ruin my credit, and you said nothing because it was easier than standing up to her. I'm so sorry, he whispers. I'm so sorry. But sorry isn't enough. Sorry doesn't undo 2 years of complicit silence. Sorry doesn't restore the trust that's been shattered. Sorry is just a word people say when they want forgiveness they haven't earned. I look around the room at my family. My mother who's been stealing from me for years. My sister who sold my career secrets to my competitor. My father who knew about the theft and chose cowardice over courage. 3 people who should have loved me, protected me, been on my side. Instead, they exploited me from 3 different angles, each betrayal feeding into the others, creating a perfect storm of abuse that could have destroyed everything I've built. There are no innocent parties here. Only different degrees of guilt. Only different flavors of betrayal. I pull up my phone and navigate to my contacts. My finger hovers over a number I never thought I'd have to call. FBI Identity Theft Hotline. I look up at them one more time, giving them a chance to say something, anything that might make this different. But they just stand there, frozen in their guilt and fear. So I press the number and lift the phone to my ear. Federal Bureau of Investigation. A professional voice answers. How may I direct your call? Identity Theft Division. I say clearly. I need to report multiple crimes. The FBI agent who answers introduces himself as Special Agent Rodriguez, and his voice carries the kind of calm professionalism that tells me he's handled hundreds of cases like this. I step outside again, needing distance from my family's escalating panic, and spend the next 40 minutes providing him with everything I know. I start with the most recent discovery, the $40,000 loan I never authorized. Then I walk backward through time, detailing every fraudulent account, every suspicious charge, every piece of evidence Jeffrey has gathered. I describe finding the documents in my father's office, the receipts for vacations I never took, the medical bills for people I've never met. My voice remains steady, clinical, as if I'm presenting a case study rather than describing my own exploitation. When I get to Veronica and Mark Ellison, Agent Rodriguez's tone shifts slightly. Mark Ellison from Crestmont Capital. Yes, you know him. We've had our eye on Mr. Ellison for approximately 8 months, he says carefully. He's suspected of being involved in a larger financial fraud network, but we've struggled to gather sufficient evidence for prosecution. What you're describing about the information sharing with your sister could be the break we've been waiting for. The vindication I feel is cold and sharp. I'm not imagining things. Mark Ellison isn't just an aggressive competitor, he's a criminal, and my sister has been his accomplice. I have the text messages, I tell him. Months of communication showing her providing client information, investment strategies, confidential company data. I can forward everything to you immediately. Please do that, Agent Rodriguez says, and I hear the satisfaction in his voice. Ms. Hart, I want to be clear about what happens next. Based on what you're telling me, we'll be opening formal investigations into multiple parties, your mother for identity theft and fraud, your sister for conspiracy to commit fraud and potentially industrial espionage, and Mark Ellison for wire fraud and theft of trade secrets. These are serious federal charges. I understand. Your sister could face significant prison time if convicted. Are you prepared for that possibility? I look back through the window at Veronica, who's collapsed into a chair, her face buried in her hands. Part of me, a small part that still remembers the little girl I helped raise, feels a pang of sympathy. But then I remember the text messages, the betrayed clients, the deals I lost because my own sister sold me out. I don't want vengeance, I say slowly, choosing my words carefully. I want accountability. For the first time in her life, Veronica needs to face real consequences that she can't manipulate or escape. If that means legal prosecution, then yes, I'm prepared for it. Understood. We'll need you to come to our field office tomorrow to provide formal statements and documentation. Can you do that? Yes. What time? After finalizing details with Agent Rodriguez and forwarding the text messages from Veronica's phone, I end the call and stand for a moment in the cold night air. My hands have stopped shaking. My mind feels clear-focused like the morning after a fever breaks. I've crossed a line I can never uncross, and instead of guilt or regret, I feel relief. When I walk back inside, the scene that greets me looks like the aftermath of a natural disaster. My mother is pacing frantically, her earlier rage transformed into barely controlled panic. My father sits at the dining table with his head in his hands. Veronica hasn't moved from her chair, staring at nothing with the blank expression of someone in shock. "You called the FBI," my mother says when she sees me. Not a question, an accusation. "You actually called the FBI on your own family." "On people who committed federal crimes against me," I correct. "Yes." She lunges toward me, and for a moment I think she might actually try to physically attack me, but my father stands and catches her arm. "Barbara, don't! Don't!" She whirls on him, her voice climbing toward hysteria. "Our daughter just destroyed this family. She's going to send Veronica to prison. She's going to ruin all of us. And you want me to stay calm?" "You destroyed this family," I say quietly. "All of you. I'm just the one who finally stopped pretending otherwise." "You're cruel," my mother spits at me. "Vindictive and cold-hearted. I don't know what happened to you, but you're not the daughter I raised. That sweet, generous girl would never do this to her family." "That sweet, generous girl was being exploited," I reply. "And you made sure she stayed that way by convincing her that setting boundaries was selfish, that protecting herself was cruel, that asking for basic respect was ungrateful. You trained me to be a victim, and you're angry that I finally stopped cooperating." "We're your family," she screams. "Family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't forge signatures and open fraudulent accounts. Family doesn't sell their sister's career secrets to her competitors." I speak with absolute calm, which seems to infuriate her even more. "You keep using that word like it's a magic shield that excuses any behavior. But it's not. You're not my family. You're people who share my DNA and who have been systematically exploiting me for years." "How can you say that?" My father's voice breaks. "After everything we've done for you, what have you done for me, Dad, specifically? What have you actually done?" I wait, but he has no answer. "You fed me and housed me when I was a child because that's what parents are legally required to do. But the moment I was old enough to contribute financially, I became your retirement plan. And when Mom started committing crimes in my name, you knew about it and said nothing. So tell me, what exactly have you done for me that justifies any of this?" The silence that follows is damning. None of them can answer because there is no answer. The narrative they've maintained that I owe them everything, that I'm obligated to support them indefinitely, has always been fiction. They haven't earned my loyalty. They've demanded it while doing nothing to deserve it. "I'm protecting myself," I say finally. "Something I was never allowed to do in this house. You can call that cruel if you want, but I call it survival." Before anyone can respond, my phone rings. I look at the screen and my blood runs cold for the second time tonight. The caller ID shows a number I recognize from business cards and conference name tags from tense negotiations and competitive bid presentations. Mark Ellison is calling me directly. For a moment, I consider not answering. But then I realize this is an opportunity. If he doesn't know the FBI is investigating him, if he doesn't realize Veronica's phone has been compromised, then he might say something incriminating. I answer the call and put it on speaker so everyone in the room can hear. "Felicia!" Mark's voice is smooth, confident, entirely too casual for someone who's been conspiring to destroy my career. "We need to talk. I think there's been a misunderstanding that we should clear up. Are you available to meet?" I watch my mother's face as Mark's voice fills the room through the speaker. She's gone completely white, her hand flying to her throat in a gesture that looks almost theatrical. But the panic in her eyes is real. A meeting sounds reasonable, I say, keeping my voice neutral and professional. Where and when? Tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock. Café Bellissimo on Newberry Street. You know it. I do. It's an upscale cafe in the heart of Boston's shopping district, the kind of place where business people have meetings they want to seem casual but aren't. Public enough to feel safe, private enough for sensitive conversations. I'll be there. Come alone, he adds, and there's something in his tone that's meant to sound like a reasonable request, but comes across as a command. This is a conversation that should stay between us. Of course. I lie smoothly, already planning to have Jeffrey positioned at a nearby table and a recording device in my purse. See you tomorrow. I end the call and look at my mother, who's staring at me with an expression I can't quite read. Fear, certainly. But there's something else underneath it. Guilt, shame, or just terror that her secrets are about to be exposed. Why would Mark Ellison be calling you personally? I ask, though I already suspect I know the answer. The pieces are assembling themselves in my mind, forming a picture even uglier than I imagined. I don't know, she says too quickly. How would I know why some business rival of yours is calling? But Veronica has started crying again, harder this time, and the sound tells me everything I need to know. There's more. There's always more. I don't sleep that night. I spend the hours reviewing documents, compiling evidence, preparing for the meeting with Mark, the way I'd prepare for a hostile negotiation. By the time dawn breaks, I have a strategy and a clear understanding of what I'm walking into. Jeffrey meets me 2 blocks from the cafe at 9:30. He hands me a small recording device that looks like a pen and positions himself at a table with a clear sightline to where I'll be sitting. If anything feels wrong, if he threatens you in any way, I'm 10 feet away, he reminds me. I know. Thank you. Mark is already seated when I arrive exactly at 10 o'clock. He's dressed impeccably in a tailored suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. His dark hair styled perfectly, his smile practiced and empty. He stands when he sees me playing the gentleman and gestures to the chair across from him. Felicia, thank you for coming. He says it like he's doing me a favor by granting me an audience. I sit without shaking his hand. Let's skip the pleasantries. You said we needed to talk. So talk. His smile doesn't waver, but I see a flicker of annoyance in his eyes. He's used to controlling these conversations, to people being intimidated by his confidence and position. I've dealt with men like him my entire career, men who mistake arrogance for competence and assume everyone else is playing by their rules. I understand there's been some confusion about certain business matters. He begins his tone suggesting we're discussing a simple misunderstanding rather than felony crimes. I'd like to resolve this quietly, professionally. I'm prepared to offer you $200,000 to drop any complaints you may have filed and to sign a non-disclosure agreement regarding any alleged interactions between myself and members of your family. $200,000. He's trying to buy my silence to make the criminal investigation disappear with money. The offer itself is an admission of guilt. Innocent people don't offer 6-figure settlements for confusion. That's generous, I say, my voice deliberately flat. But I'm not interested in your money. His smile tightens almost imperceptibly. Felicia, be reasonable. We're both professionals. We both understand how business works. Sometimes conflicts arise, and the smart solution is to resolve them without unnecessary complications. Litigation is expensive. Federal investigations are time-consuming. Why put us both through that when we could settle this now? Because what you're describing isn't a business conflict. It's industrial espionage. It's conspiracy to commit fraud. It's criminal activity that's been operating for months, maybe longer. I lean forward slightly. And I'm not interested in making your problems go away. The mask slips for just a moment, and I see the panic underneath. His jaw clenches. His fingers tighten around his coffee cup. He's terrified, I realize. His entire scheme is unraveling and he's desperate to stop it. You should think very carefully about what you're doing, he says, his voice dropping to something lower and more threatening. If I go down, I'm taking everyone with me. And I mean everyone, including people you care about, including people who might have been more involved in this than you realize. Is that a threat? It's a fact. He leans back, trying to reclaim his composure. You want to know how I got all that information about your clients, your strategies, your plans? It wasn't just Veronica. Your sister is impulsive and stupid, useful but unreliable. No, I had a much better source. Someone with deeper access. Someone who's been feeding me information for years in exchange for the lifestyle she felt she deserved. My stomach drops even as my face remains impassive. Who? Instead of answering, he pulls out his phone, swipes through photos, and slides it across the table. The screen shows a series of pictures that make my vision blur for a moment. My mother, with Mark, at a beach resort, his arm around her waist, in a restaurant holding hands across a table, in what looks like a hotel room, the kind of intimate photo that leaves no room for innocent interpretation. Your mother and I have been close for about 3 years now, he says, watching my reaction carefully. She's been very generous with information. Client lists, your work schedule, security questions, personal details. Everything I needed. And in exchange, I gave her what she wanted. Money trips, the kind of attention she wasn't getting at home. The photos swim before my eyes. My mother, 20 years older than Mark, looking happier than I've ever seen her. My mother, who spent my entire life lecturing me about family values and proper behavior. My mother, who called me a failure for not being married while she was conducting an affair with a man young enough to be her son. She sold you out for a boyfriend. Mark continues, his voice taking on a cruel edge now that he thinks he's landed a devastating blow. All those credit cards in your name, that was her funding our trips. The loans, our investment opportunities. She's been using you as her personal bank to maintain a relationship with me. And the best part? Your father has no idea. Neither did you. She played you all perfectly. I stare at the photos, trying to process what I'm seeing. The betrayal isn't just financial anymore. It's not just about stealing money or credit. My mother has been conducting an affair using my identity to fund it, feeding my confidential business information to her lover, all while maintaining the facade of a concerned parent worried about my lonely, unsuccessful life. The hypocrisy is so profound it's almost abstract. Every lecture about family loyalty, every comment about my failure to marry, every judgment about my life choices, all coming from a woman who was stealing from her daughter to keep a man half her age. I look up at Mark, and he's smiling now, thinking he's won. Thinking this revelation will break me, make me more willing to negotiate, to back down and protect my family's reputation. He has no idea who he's dealing with. Thank you, I say calmly, sliding his phone back across the table. You've just given me even more evidence for the FBI. His smile disappears. What? You just admitted to conspiracy, to receiving stolen information, to conducting a 3-year scheme to defraud me and my company, and I've recorded every word. I stand up, gathering my things. You should expect to hear from federal investigators very soon. Enjoy your coffee. I walk out of the cafe with my head high, not looking back. Jeffrey falls into step beside me a moment later. Did you get all that? I ask. Every word. He just confessed to multiple felonies. Jeffrey sounds almost gleeful. Felicia, this is the best evidence we could have asked for. But I barely hear him. My mind is still reeling from the photos, from the magnitude of my mother's betrayal. She didn't just steal from me. She sold me out to her lover. She weaponized my own family bonds to fund an affair while simultaneously judging me for not conforming to her standards of womanhood. When I get home that evening, exhausted and emotionally raw, I check my phone and find 17 missed calls and twice as many text messages. Most are from reporters. My stomach sinks as I open my news app and see the headlines that have exploded across financial blogs and industry websites over the past 6 hours. CFO Felicia Hart, accused of exploiting family members. Investment executive under investigation for financial fraud. Hart family claims daughter destroyed their lives out of spite. Mark has struck back. And he's struck hard. I sit in my apartment reading through the articles with a cold detachment that surprises me. The lies are sophisticated, carefully crafted to sound just plausible enough that people might believe them. According to these stories, I'm a controlling, manipulative woman who spent years psychologically abusing my family while living off their emotional labor. The narrative is almost impressive in its complete inversion of reality. One article quotes an anonymous family source, saying, "I demanded they take out loans to fund my expensive lifestyle and then threatened them with legal action when they couldn't pay." Another claims I forged documents to make it look like they were stealing from me when really I'd been stealing from them for years. The stories are absurd, easily disproven with basic fact-checking, but that's not the point. The point is to create enough smoke that people assume there must be fire somewhere. What makes it worse is seeing quotes from my own mother. "My daughter has always struggled with controlling behavior," she tells one reporter. "We've tried to help her to be supportive, but she sees everything as a personal attack. We're heartbroken that she's taken things this far." The quote is accompanied by a photo of her looking exhausted and sad, the picture of a concerned mother worried about her troubled child. Even now, even facing criminal charges, they're blaming me. They're positioning themselves as victims of my cruelty rather than perpetrators of fraud. The audacity would be impressive if it weren't so infuriating. My phone rings before dawn. It's Margaret Chen, my company's chief communications officer. "We need to meet, now. This is getting out of control." By 8 o'clock, I'm in a conference room with Margaret, our legal team, our CEO, Michael Brennan, and a crisis management consultant Margaret has brought in. The consultant, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia, who looks like she eats corporate scandals for breakfast, spreads documents across the table. "First, the good news," Patricia begins. "These allegations are so poorly constructed that anyone with basic research skills can see they're false. The bad news is most people don't do basic research. They see headlines, form opinions, and move on. We need to control this narrative before it controls you." "What do you recommend?" Michael asks. He's been my ally since I became CFO, and his presence here is both supportive and strategic. If I go down, it reflects poorly on his judgment in promoting me. Patricia looks at me directly. "We go on offense, not with emotions or denials, but with evidence. We bury them in documentation until the truth is undeniable." For the next 6 hours, we assemble a comprehensive package. Bank statements spanning 15 years showing every payment I made to my family, every fraudulent charge, every loan I never authorized. Email records, recorded conversations, security footage from stores where my credit cards were used by people who weren't me, testimony from forensic accountants who've analyzed the paper trail, expert opinions from identity theft specialists. The evidence is overwhelming and meticulous. It shows exactly what happened when it happened and who did it. There's no room for interpretation or spin. The facts speak for themselves. "This is ironclad," Margaret says, reviewing the materials. "We should have this independently verified by a third-party firm and then release everything publicly. Let people see the truth." "Won't that make you look vindictive?" Patricia asks me directly. "Going public with family finances." "I'm not going public with family finances," I correct her. "I'm going public with evidence of crimes committed against me. There's a difference. They made this public when they started giving interviews. I'm just providing context." By the end of the day, we've prepared a comprehensive press release accompanied by a dedicated website containing all the documentation properly redacted to protect sensitive information, but thorough enough to prove every claim. We include a statement from forensic accountants, character references from colleagues spanning my entire career. Everything that demonstrates 15 years of ethical, transparent, professional behavior. The response is immediate and dramatic. Within hours of releasing our evidence package, the narrative begins to shift. Journalists who'd run the initial stories publish retractions or follow-ups examining the evidence we've provided. Financial experts analyze the documentation and confirm its authenticity. The tide of public opinion turns like a ship changing course. But what surprises me most is the response from ordinary people, especially women in their 50s and 60s. They start sharing their own stories on social media, in comment sections, in letters sent to my company. Story after story of daughters who paid their parents' bills for years without acknowledgement. Sisters who were exploited by siblings. Women who sacrificed their own financial security for family members who showed no gratitude. I paid for my mother's house for 15 years while she told everyone I was selfish, one woman writes. I thought I was the only one. My brother stole from me for a decade, and my parents said I was being difficult when I cut him off. Another shares. Reading Felicia's story made me realize I wasn't crazy. The messages pour in by the hundreds, then thousands. I become an unintentional symbol of something larger than my personal situation. Women see their own experiences reflected in mine, their own pain validated. The cultural assumption that family members deserve unlimited access to your resources, that setting boundaries makes you a bad daughter or sister. That financial abuse within families doesn't count as real abuse. All of it is suddenly being questioned publicly. News outlets start covering not just my story, but the broader issue. Financial experts are invited on television to discuss family financial abuse. Therapists talk about the psychological manipulation that makes victims feel guilty for protecting themselves. Lawyers explain the legal options available to people being exploited by relatives. My story has opened a door that reveals a problem far bigger than I realized. I'm not unique. I'm just the one who happened to have enough evidence and resources to fight back publicly. 3 days after releasing our evidence package, I receive another wave of messages. But these aren't from journalists or strangers. They're from clients, some current and many former. Several clients who'd left our firm for Crestmont Capital send apologetic emails explaining that they now understand they were manipulated by Mark Ellison, that the information he had wasn't superior market analysis, but stolen intelligence. 2 of them want to transfer their portfolios back. Michael forwards me an email from the board of directors. They've reviewed everything and issued a statement of full support. My position is secure. My reputation, at least professionally, is being restored. But personally, I feel hollowed out. The public vindication doesn't erase the private betrayal. My mother still chose an affair over her daughter. Veronica still sold me out for money and attention. My father still chose cowardice over courage. The facts may be on my side, but the emotional damage remains. I'm sitting at my desk reviewing market reports, trying to return to some semblance of normal routine when my phone rings. Agent Rodriguez from the FBI. Ms. Hart, he says, and there's something in his voice that makes me sit up straighter. We've just arrested Mark Ellison. He's in custody now, and you need to hear what he's saying. Can you come to our office immediately? What's he saying? He's willing to provide testimony about your mother and sister's involvement in exchange for a reduced sentence. But there's more. Information about financial crimes that go beyond what you reported. This is bigger than we thought. My hand tightens around the phone. How much bigger? Come in and we'll explain everything. But Ms. Hart, you might want to bring your attorney. What Mark's telling us changes everything. Jeffrey drives me to the FBI field office, both of us silent during the 20-minute commute. My mind cycles through possibilities, trying to imagine what Mark could have revealed that changes everything. But nothing I conjure comes close to what Agent Rodriguez tells us once we're seated in a sterile conference room. Mark Ellison has been involved in a financial fraud network spanning 3 states and involving at least 15 victims. Rodriguez begins sliding a folder across the table. Your case gave us the evidence we needed to move forward, but it's just one piece of a much larger operation. He's been running the same scheme for years. Identify successful professionals, usually women, cultivate relationships with their family members, and exploit those relationships to steal both money and business intelligence. I open the folder and see faces of women I don't know. Their stories are eerily similar to mine. Successful careers, family members who suddenly started making expensive purchases, deals that fell through mysteriously, credit destroyed by loans they never took out. Your sister wasn't his first accomplice, Rodriguez continues. He has a pattern of targeting younger siblings or children of successful people, offering them money and romantic attention in exchange for information and access. Veronica fit his profile perfectly, resentful of your success, financially dependent, eager for male validation. The clinical description of my sister's vulnerabilities is both accurate and painful to hear. But what strikes me most is that she was never special to Mark. Never the exception she probably believed herself to be. She was just another Mark in a well-practiced con. We need Veronica to testify against him, Rodriguez says. She can provide information about his methods, his contacts, other victims he's mentioned. In exchange, we're prepared to recommend reduced charges. Not immunity, but significantly less prison time than she'd face otherwise. Has she agreed? Jeffrey asks. We've summoned her for formal questioning tomorrow morning. Whether she cooperates or not will determine how we proceed. When I leave the FBI office 3 hours later, my phone has 17 missed calls from my family. I don't return any of them. Let them sit with their panic. Let them wonder what's happening. They've spent years keeping me in the dark while they exploited me. Now it's their turn to live with uncertainty. The news breaks that evening. Boston finance executive arrested in multi-state fraud scheme, reads the headline on every local station. Mark's photo appears on screen, being led out of his office in handcuffs, his usual confident expression replaced by barely concealed fear. The report mentions he's been charged with wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy, and industrial espionage. His bail is set at $2 million. My mother calls 9 times in the span of an hour. When I finally answer, her voice is shrill with hysteria. They're saying Veronica has to go to the FBI tomorrow. They're going to arrest her. You have to do something, Felicia. You have to stop this. I'm not stopping anything, Mom. Veronica committed crimes. She has to face the consequences. She's your sister. She made a mistake. Why are you being so cruel about this? The audacity of calling me cruel even now is almost impressive. A mistake is forgetting someone's birthday. Veronica spent months passing confidential information to my competitor in exchange for money. That's not a mistake. That's a conscious choice she made repeatedly. She was manipulated. That man took advantage of her. She's 32 years old, not a child. She knew what she was doing was wrong. She did it anyway. My voice remains calm, steady, the same tone I use in difficult negotiations. And while we're on the subject of manipulation, let's talk about you and Mark. How long did you think you could hide that affair? The silence on the other end is absolute. I can hear her breathing fast and shallow, but she says nothing. I've seen the photos, Mom. I know you've been using my money to fund your relationship with him. I know you've been feeding him information about me, about my work, about my clients. You sold out your own daughter to impress your boyfriend. That's not... She starts, but her voice breaks. It wasn't like that. Then tell me what it was like. Tell me how a woman who's lectured me my entire adult life about family values and proper behavior was conducting an affair with a man young enough to be her son. Tell me how stealing from your daughter to pay for romantic getaways somehow aligns with the moral standards you've always claimed to have. She makes a sound that might be a sob or might be rage, and then the line goes dead. She's hung up on me. Even confronted with undeniable evidence of her betrayal, she can't face it. She'd rather run than accept responsibility. My father calls 20 minutes later, his voice tired and defeated. Your mother told me everything. About Mark. About the affair. I didn't know, Felicia. I swear I didn't know about that part. But you knew about the identity theft. You knew about the fraudulent accounts. You knew I was being robbed, and you said nothing. I know, and I'll regret that for the rest of my life. He pauses, and I hear him take a shaky breath. But please, sweetheart, can't you step back from this a little? For the family's sake, Veronica is terrified. Your mother is falling apart. If you could just talk to the FBI, ask them to go easier. No. The single word stops him mid-sentence. This is what you've always done, I continue. You ask me to sacrifice, to step back to accommodate everyone else's feelings and needs while mine don't matter. You want me to save Veronica the way I've been saving all of you for decades. But I'm done, Dad. I'm done being the family's solution to problems other people created. She's your sister. She betrayed me. She sold my career secrets to my competitor for money. She helped destroy business relationships I spent years building. And you want me to protect her from the consequences? Veronica made adult choices. She gets to face adult consequences. You've become so hard, he says quietly, so unforgiving. I've become self-protective. There's a difference. And if you can't see that, then you're part of the problem. I end the call and turn on the late evening news. Mark's arrest is the lead story, and the coverage has expanded to include details about his victims. My name isn't mentioned directly, but the reporter notes that the investigation was triggered by a Boston area CFO who'd been targeted for years. The news segment includes an interview with a financial crimes expert who explains how family-based fraud networks operate, how victims often don't report because of shame or misplaced loyalty. The victim in this case did everything right, the expert says. She kept meticulous records, reported the crimes promptly, and didn't let family pressure stop her from seeking justice. Her documentation is apparently so thorough, it's become the foundation of the entire case against Ellison. My meticulous record-keeping, the trait my family called obsessive, the habit they mocked as controlling and paranoid. It's become the weapon that's bringing down a criminal network and might send my mother and sister to prison. There's a bitter irony in that. The very behaviors they criticized me for are now the reason they're facing justice. 3 days later, a courier delivers an official document to my apartment. It's a court summons. The United States District Court requires my testimony in United States vs. Mark Ellison and related cases. I'm listed as the primary witness for the prosecution. The trial date is set for 8 weeks from now. 8 weeks to prepare, to organize my evidence, to steel myself for what will undoubtedly be the most difficult testimony of my life. Because standing in a courtroom and detailing how my own family exploited me won't just be about legal proceedings and criminal charges. It'll be the final public acknowledgement that the family I tried so hard to love never really loved me back. And that truth, more than any of the financial losses or professional sabotage, is the wound that cuts deepest. The preliminary hearing takes place in a federal courtroom that feels simultaneously too large and too small for what's about to unfold. I sit beside Jeffrey in the gallery, watching as Veronica enters with her court-appointed attorney. She's dressed in a modest blue dress, her hair pulled back, makeup minimal. She looks young and vulnerable, exactly the image her lawyer wants to project. When it's her turn to speak, Veronica's voice trembles with what sounds like genuine fear. My sister always controlled everything in our family because she had money. I was terrified of her. She made me feel like I owed her something just for existing. When Mark offered to help me, to give me some independence, I felt like I finally had a way out. I didn't know what he was really doing. I thought he just wanted to understand the business world better. I watch this performance with detached fascination. She's trying to paint herself as my victim, as someone so psychologically damaged by my control that she had no choice but to conspire with a criminal. It might have worked if the evidence didn't exist. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Allison Reeves, methodically dismantles Veronica's narrative. She presents emails where Veronica voluntarily offered information unprompted by Mark. Text messages where she bragged about having insider access to my work. Bank records showing regular payments of $1,500 to $3,000, far too much for casual favors, and clearly structured as compensation. Then comes the security footage. Grainy but unmistakable video from my apartment building showing Veronica entering my home when she knew I'd be at work. Time-stamped images of her in my home office photographing documents on my desk. The timestamp shows she spent 43 minutes systematically documenting my files before leaving. Does this look like someone acting under duress? Allison asks the judge, freeze-framing an image of Veronica casually examining a file folder. Or someone deliberately committing espionage? Veronica's lawyer objects, argues, tries to reframe the evidence, but it's futile. The documentation is too comprehensive, too damning. When I take the stand, my hands are steady despite my racing heart. I've rehearsed this testimony with Allison for hours, but no amount of preparation can fully numb the pain of speaking these truths publicly. I described the first fraudulent charge I found, the confusion of discovering accounts in my name that I never opened, the sinking realization that the perpetrator wasn't a stranger but family. I detail the psychological impact of being exploited by people who claim to love me, of questioning my own judgment, of wondering if I was selfish for wanting basic autonomy over my own finances. My voice remains steady as I explain how my career was sabotaged, how deals collapsed because my competitor had inside information, how my professional reputation suffered while I had no idea why. I see several women in the gallery wiping tears, their expressions showing recognition of something they've experienced themselves. The cross-examination is brutal but expected. Veronica's attorney tries to paint me as a controlling, vindictive woman who's exaggerating ordinary family conflict. But every accusation is met with documentation. Every claim of my unreasonableness is countered with bank statements showing hundreds of thousands of dollars in support I provided willingly. When the judge delivers her preliminary ruling, her voice is firm and clear. Veronica is found complicit in conspiracy to commit identity theft and fraud. The sentence includes 3 years probation, $70,000 in restitution, mandatory financial and psychological counseling, and a permanent order prohibiting her from accessing any of my financial information or accounts. Ms. Hart, the judge says, looking directly at Veronica, you're 32 years old. You made conscious choices to participate in criminal activity. This court will not excuse those choices because they involved family. You will be held accountable. It's a relatively light sentence considering Veronica could have faced years in federal prison. But watching my sister's face crumple as the reality settles over her, I realize this might be more devastating than prison would have been. Because Veronica has never faced consequences she couldn't escape. She's always had someone to save her, someone to fix her mistakes, someone to shoulder the blame. Not anymore. As the hearing concludes and people begin filing out of the courtroom, I gather my things and head toward the exit. I need airspace distance from everything that just happened. Felicia. Veronica's voice stops me in the courthouse hallway. I turn to see her running toward me, her attorney trying and failing to hold her back. She reaches me, breathing hard, tears streaming down her face. Please, she gasps. Please, I know I don't deserve it, but I really want to change. I need help. I can't do this alone anymore. She looks at me with desperation I've never seen before. Will you give me a chance? Just one chance to prove I can be better. I look at Veronica standing in the courthouse hallway, really look at her for the first time in what feels like years. Her mascara has run in dark streaks down her face. Her hands are shaking. This isn't the performance she gave in the courtroom or the practiced vulnerability she's used on our parents for decades. This is raw terror, genuine desperation, the look of someone who's finally realized she's out of safety nets. Please, she says again when I don't immediately respond. I know I don't deserve anything from you. I know I've destroyed your trust. But I'm drowning, Felicia. I don't know how to be a real person. I've never had to be. Before I can answer, she pulls out her phone with trembling fingers. I need to show you something. I should have shown you years ago. She navigates to her email drafts and hands me the phone. The email is dated 5 years ago. The subject line reads, I'm sorry. I scroll down and read words I never expected to see. Sis, I need to tell you about Mom and the credit cards. She opened accounts in your name. I found the statements in her closet when I was looking for a sweater. I've been trying to figure out how to tell you, but I'm scared. I'm so scared of what happens if I say something. But this is wrong. I know it's wrong. I just don't know how to be brave enough to tell you. The email was never sent. It sat in her drafts folder for 5 years, evidence of a moment of conscience that she couldn't quite act on. I look up at her, my expression carefully neutral, despite the emotions churning inside me. You knew. 5 years ago you knew what Mom was doing to me and you said nothing. I tried, Veronica says, her voice breaking. I swear I tried. I confronted Mom about it. I told her she had to stop, that she had to tell you. And Veronica closes her eyes, tears squeezing out from beneath her lids. She told me that if I said anything to you, she'd cut me off completely. That I'd have nothing, no support, no family, nothing. And I was 27, unemployed, living with them because I couldn't afford my own place. I was terrified of being alone. She opens her eyes and looks at me with something that might be shame. So I convinced myself it was okay. I told myself you had so much money you wouldn't even notice. That Mom was just borrowing temporarily. I made up every excuse I could think of, because it was easier than facing the truth. Easier than risking everything. I hand her phone back, processing this information. The revelation doesn't excuse what Veronica did. It doesn't erase her participation in Mark's scheme or her years of exploitation. But it does add context, shows me that the monster I've been fighting isn't just my family's greed. It's a pattern of manipulation and control that's been operating for generations with my mother at its center. You were afraid of Mom, I say slowly. So instead of protecting me, you protected yourself. Yes, she doesn't try to defend it. And then it got easier. After a while, I stopped feeling guilty. I started thinking maybe I deserved the money Mom was taking from you because my life was harder than yours. You had success and independence and I had nothing. It felt like fairness in some twisted way. The honesty is brutal, and probably more than I expected. Veronica isn't trying to manipulate me with this confession. She's just stating facts, however ugly they are. And Mark, I ask. At first I thought he genuinely liked me. By the time I realized he was using me, I was in too deep. I'd already given him information. I'd already accepted money. Walking away would have meant admitting I'd been a fool, and I couldn't face that. She wipes her eyes with the back of her hand. I kept telling myself it was just business, that it wasn't really hurting you. But I knew. Deep down, I always knew. I stand there in the courthouse hallway, security guards walking past us, other people's legal dramas playing out around us, and I make a decision. Not because Veronica deserves my forgiveness, but because I deserve to stop carrying the weight of this family's dysfunction. Forgiveness doesn't mean exemption from consequences, I say quietly. You're still going to serve your probation. You're still going to pay restitution. And if you want any possibility of rebuilding a relationship with me, here are my conditions. She nods eagerly, desperately. Anything. Mandatory therapy with a licensed counselor who specializes in family dynamics and financial abuse. Not 3 sessions. Not until you feel better. For at least a year consistently. I count off on my fingers. Real employment that you find and maintain yourself for a minimum of 6 months. I don't care if it's retail or food service or data entry. You need to learn what it means to earn your own money. Okay, she whispers. You repay every dollar you stole through a structured payment plan, not when it's convenient, not when you feel like it. Regular payments that I can verify. I pause. And you are absolutely prohibited from using my name, my information, my identity for any purpose whatsoever. No credit applications, no references, no emergency contacts, nothing. I understand. If you comply with these conditions genuinely, consistently, without excuses or manipulation, then maybe eventually we can talk about rebuilding some kind of relationship. But Veronica, this is your last chance. There will be no more. She's crying openly now, but she nods. Thank you. Thank you for not giving up on me completely. I don't tell her that I already have given up on the sister I thought I had. The woman standing in front of me is a stranger. I'm offering a conditional truce to nothing more. But maybe that's enough for now. My phone rings before I can say anything else. My father's name appears on the screen. I answer, and his voice is so strained I barely recognize it. "Felicia, sweetheart, your mother and I need to talk to you. It's urgent, very urgent. Can you come to the house right away?" Something in his tone makes my stomach drop. "What's wrong?" "Not over the phone. Please just come. There's something we need to tell you face to face." I arrive at my parents' house 40 minutes later, my conversation with Veronica still echoing in my mind. My father meets me at the door before I can even knock, his face drawn and aged in a way I've never seen before. He looks like he's aged a decade in the past few weeks. "Come with me," he says quietly. "Not inside. Let's talk out here." He leads me around the side of the house to the backyard, away from windows where my mother might overhear. The November air is cold enough that I can see our breath, but he doesn't seem to notice. He reaches into his jacket and pulls out a manila envelope, holding it like it contains something radioactive. "I need to show you this before we go inside. Before you see your mother." I take the envelope and open it. Inside are divorce papers professionally prepared with my father's signature already in place. Beneath them are printed photos my mother and Mark at various locations, time-stamped and dated. Evidence of an affair documented with the kind of thoroughness that could only come from a private investigator. "You're divorcing her," I say, and it's not a question. "Yes." His voice is stronger than I've heard it in years, carrying a conviction I didn't know he possessed. "I know I was weak, Felicia. For years, decades even. I let your mother hurt you because I was afraid of confrontation. I told myself I was keeping the peace, holding the family together. But really, I was just a coward." He takes a shaky breath, and I see tears forming in his eyes. "When you stood up that day at dinner, when you said no more, and refused to let us diminish you anymore, something broke inside me. I watched my daughter face down her entire family alone with more courage than I've ever had. And I thought, if she can do that, why can't I face the one person I've been afraid of my whole marriage?" "How long have you been planning this?" I ask, looking at the divorce papers. Their comprehensive detailed the work of weeks or months. "I contacted a lawyer the day after you called the FBI. I've been meeting with him, secretly building the case, gathering evidence. The affair with Mark, the financial fraud, everything." He gestures to the envelope. "I'm filing for divorce on grounds of adultery and financial malfeasance. The settlement will include repayment to you for everything she stole." I stare at my father, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time in my adult life. He's not the weak man I thought he was. He's a man who's been weak, but is choosing to become strong. The distinction matters. "I'm sorry." He continues, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry for all the years I stood by and watched her hurt you. For the times I should have protected you and didn't. For choosing my own comfort over your safety. You deserved a father who would stand up for you, and I failed at that. I failed you completely." The apology lands differently than the others I've heard. It's not performative or strategic. It's genuine acknowledgement of harm without excuses or deflection. It's the apology I've been waiting decades to hear. "Why now?" I ask. "Why are you telling me before you tell her?" "Because you deserve to know first. And because I need you to understand that this isn't your fault. None of it. Not the divorce, not the legal consequences she's facing, none of it. These are consequences of her own choices." He looks at me directly. "And I need you to know that even if you can never forgive me, I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be the father I should have been all along." We stand in silence for a moment, the weight of 37 years of dysfunction hanging between us. Then my father nods toward the house. "She wants to talk to you. I think she finally understands what she's done, but I can't speak for her. You should hear what she has to say yourself." Inside, my mother sits at the kitchen table, looking smaller than I've ever seen her. Her hands are wrapped around a mug of tea that's gone cold, and when she looks up at me, her face is blotchy from crying. This isn't the composed, critical woman who spent years judging me. This is someone broken. "Felicia," she says, and her voice cracks on my name. "I need to tell you some things. Things I should have said years ago." I sit down across from her, maintaining distance, keeping my guard up. I've seen her perform remorse before, but what comes next surprises me. "I was jealous of you," she says simply. "From the moment you started succeeding in your career, I was jealous. You achieved things I never could, built a life I never had, and instead of being proud, I resented you for it." She looks down at her hands. "I told myself I was teaching you proper values, that I was concerned about your future. But really I was trying to diminish you because your success made me feel like I'd failed. Every time you accomplished something, it reminded me of everything I didn't do with my own life. The honesty is stunning and terrible. So you stole from me." "Yes, and I justified it by telling myself you had more than enough, that you owed us for raising you, that family takes care of each other. But the truth is, I wanted to take from you because I couldn't stand that you had what I didn't." She finally looks at me. "The affair with Mark the fraud, all of it. I wasn't just stealing money. I was trying to steal your power, your independence, everything that made you more successful than I ever was." The apology that follows is painful to hear because it's real. There's no manipulation, no strategic tears designed to make me soften, just raw acknowledgement of harm. But acknowledgement doesn't erase damage. Words don't undo years of exploitation. "I don't know if I can forgive you," I say quietly. "Not now. Maybe not ever." "I know," she whispers. "I don't expect you to. I just needed you to know the truth." I stand exhausted by revelations and confessions. "I'll think about everything you've both said. But I have another important decision to make first. One that changes everything." My father looks at me questioningly, but I don't elaborate. Some decisions need to be made alone, without the weight of family expectations or the hope of reconciliation influencing them. I walk out of that house knowing I may never return. 2 days later, I return to my parents' house with Jeffrey and a folder of legal documents. This time, I'm not here for confessions or apologies. I'm here to reclaim what's mine. My mother, father, and Veronica are all waiting in the living room when I arrive, their faces showing varying degrees of anxiety. They know something is coming. They can sense the shift in power as clearly as animals sense a storm approaching. I don't sit down. I stand in front of them and open the folder. I've spent the last 48 hours reviewing property records and consulting with real estate attorneys. I begin, my voice carrying the professional authority I use in boardroom presentations. This house is currently titled in Mom and Dad's names. However, I have documentation proving I've paid every single mortgage payment for the past 11 years. That's over $200,000. My father's face pales. My mother's hands grip the armrests of her chair. "Legally, I have grounds to claim equitable interest in this property, but I'm not interested in joint ownership." I pull out a document and set it on the coffee table. "I'm transferring the deed entirely into my name. The house becomes mine exclusively. You'll be living here as my tenants, not as owners." The silence that follows is absolute. Veronica's mouth falls open. My mother looks like she might faint. My father just stares at the document as if it's written in a foreign language. "You can't do that." My mother finally manages, but her voice lacks conviction. "I can and I am. Jeffrey has verified everything. The paperwork is already in process." I look at each of them in turn. This house that you've lived in, that Veronica has posted on Instagram as proof of family success, that you've used as collateral for your lifestyle, it was never yours. It was my gift, and I'm taking it back. Veronica stands abruptly, her face flushed. "I told people this was our family home. I've had friends over here. Everyone thinks wrong," I interrupt. "This has been my house for years. You've just been living in it without acknowledgement or gratitude. Now that's going to be formalized." My father clears his throat, and I see something like acceptance in his eyes. He understands he has no standing to object, no moral authority to argue. "What happens now?" he asks quietly. "You have two options. Option 1, you leave within 30 days and I sell the house or rent it to someone else. Option 2, you stay under the conditions I'm about to outline, living here as my tenants. What conditions? My mother asks, her voice small. I pull out another document. This one, a rental agreement I've had Jeffrey draft. First, you pay rent. Market rate is $2,800 a month. I'm charging you $1,500, which is below market, but not free. You'll make those payments on time every month, or you're evicted. My mother opens her mouth to protest, but I continue before she can speak. Second, all utilities are in your names now, not mine. You're responsible for those bills. Third, you are permanently prohibited from using my name's social security number or any personal information for any financial purpose whatsoever. Any violation results in immediate eviction and criminal charges. I set the rental agreement on the table next to the deed transfer documents. Fourth, Veronica doesn't live here anymore. She needs to find her own place within 60 days. This house is for Mom and Dad only. Veronica makes a sound of protest, but my father puts a hand on her arm, silencing her. And finally, I'm installing a home security system with cameras. Not to spy on you, but to protect my property and ensure compliance with these terms. This is a legally binding rental agreement with consequences for violations. No more verbal promises, no more assumptions. Everything is documented. My mother is crying now, but they're not the manipulative tears I'm used to. They're tears of humiliation, of recognizing how completely the power dynamic has shifted. For decades, she's been the matriarch, the one who controlled the family narrative. Now she's a tenant in a house she thought she owned. This is how functional families operate, I tell them. With clear boundaries, mutual respect, and documented agreements. You're going to learn what that means starting today. I leave the documents on the table and walk toward the door. You have 48 hours to decide. Sign the rental agreement and stay under these terms, or leave and I'll sell the property. Your choice. That night, I'm at my apartment reviewing case files for work when my phone rings. It's an unknown number, but something makes me answer. Heavy breathing. Then Veronica's voice whispering, "Felicia, I need to tell you something. About Mark. There's more you don't know." My blood runs cold. What about Mark? I can't talk on my phone. They might be monitoring it. Can you come to the coffee shop on Dartmouth Street, please? It's important. Every instinct tells me this is a trap or manipulation. But there's something in her voice, genuine fear, that makes me hesitate. 30 minutes, I say. And Veronica, if this is a game, we're done. Forever. It's not a game, she whispers. I promise. I just learned something about Mom that you need to know, something worse than the affair. I meet Veronica at the coffee shop with my guard fully raised, prepared for manipulation or lies. But when she slides a USB drive across the table, her hands are shaking and her eyes are red from crying. I found these in Mom's email account, she says quietly. She asked me to help her recover her password last week, and I saw things that made me realize how deep this goes. I plug the drive into my laptop right there at the table, and what I see makes my stomach turn. Bank statements going back 13 years, email correspondence, scanned documents, all meticulously organized in folders labeled by year. The first fraudulent credit card in my name was opened in 2012. I was 27 years old, 2 years into my first real job at the investment firm. My starting salary had just increased to $75,000, enough to be comfortable, but hardly wealthy. The credit limit was $5,000. My mother used it to buy furniture. I scroll through more files, watching the pattern emerge with horrifying clarity. Every time I got a promotion, every time my salary increased, a new account appeared. Credit cards, store financing, eventually loans. The exploitation scaled with my success, a parasite growing as its host grew stronger. When did you know? I ask Veronica without looking up from the screen. I didn't. Not until I saw this folder 2 days ago. I thought it started when I was involved when I found those statements 5 years ago, but she'd been doing it for years before that. She taught me how. Veronica's voice breaks. She made it seem normal, like this was just what families did. I didn't realize she was training me to see you the same way she did. I find the email Veronica referenced, dated 5 years ago, sent from my mother to Veronica. Felicia doesn't need this money since she has no family of her own, no husband to support, no children to raise. We deserve it more than she does. She has no one depending on her, so what's the harm? It's our right as her family to share in her success. Think of it as paying us back for raising her. I read the words 3 times each time, feeling like I've been punched in the chest. The twisted logic is laid out so clearly, so matter-of-factly. In my mother's worldview, my choice not to have children made me less deserving of my own money. My success created an obligation to fund her life. I existed not as a person with autonomy and rights, but as a resource to be extracted. There's more, Veronica says, pulling up another folder. Emails between Mom and Grandma before she died. Look at what Grandma wrote. I read emails from my maternal grandmother who died when I was 25. The language is almost identical to my mother's later emails. Your sister doesn't need help, she has a good job. You deserve support more than she does. Family money should go to those who need it most. You raised her, she owes you. The realization hits me like a freight train. This pattern didn't start with my mother. She learned it from her mother, who probably learned it from hers. This is generational trauma packaged as family obligation, a toxic system of exploitation passed down like an inheritance. My mother taught Veronica the same worldview, the same justifications, the same techniques. And if I hadn't stopped it, Veronica would have eventually taught her own children, if she had any, to see other people as resources rather than human beings. I'm showing you this because I need you to understand something, Veronica says. I was wrong. Everything I did was wrong, but I was also taught that it was right. Mom convinced me that taking from you wasn't theft, it was redistribution. That you owed us because you had more. She made exploitation feel like justice. I close the laptop, my mind racing with implications. This changes everything. My mother wasn't just a thief. She was the architect of a multi-generational system designed to drain me of resources and autonomy. She groomed Veronica to continue the pattern, created a family culture where I existed solely to serve their needs. Thank you for showing me this, I tell Veronica. I know it wasn't easy. I'm trying to be better, she says. Really trying. And part of that means you need to know the full truth. I spend the rest of that night going through every file on the USB drive. By dawn, I have a complete picture of 13 years of systematic exploitation. I also have something else, evidence of premeditation, of planning, of deliberate psychological manipulation designed to make me complicit in my own abuse. At 8 o'clock in the morning, I drive to my parents' house. My father opens the door, surprised to see me so early. Where's Mom? I ask. In the kitchen. Felicia, what's wrong? I walk past him without answering, laptop under my arm. My mother is sitting at the kitchen table with her morning coffee, and when she sees my face, she knows. Veronica showed me everything. I say, setting the laptop on the table and opening it to the folder of evidence. Every email, every bank statement, every piece of documentation showing that you've been stealing from me since 2012. Her coffee cup freezes halfway to her mouth. I know you opened the first fraudulent account when I was 27. I know you scaled up the theft every time I got promoted. I know you taught Veronica to see me as a resource rather than a person. I know you learned this from your own mother and planned to pass it down to the next generation. My father appears in the doorway behind me. What is she talking about, Barbara? My mother's face has gone completely white. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, she has no response, no justification, no manipulation ready. She just sits there staring at the evidence of her crimes, unable to deny what's right in front of her. You weren't just a thief, I say quietly. You were a mastermind, and this ends now. The confrontation with my mother leaves us all drained and hollow. She doesn't deny the evidence because she can't. She just sits there staring at the laptop screen showing 13 years of calculated exploitation, her face blank with the realization that her carefully constructed justifications have been stripped away. My father looks between us, his face gray with shock. "You've been doing this since Felicia was 27. All this time you've been stealing from our daughter, and I didn't know. You knew about some of it," I remind him. "You just didn't know how deep it went." Within an hour, I'm in Jeffrey's office with the complete evidence file that Veronica provided. He reviews everything methodically, making notes, occasionally stopping to shake his head in disbelief. "This is comprehensive enough to pursue both civil and criminal charges," he says finally. "Against your mother for the identity theft and fraud, obviously, but also against Mark Ellison for theft of trade secrets and against Veronica as an accessory to fraud. The question is, how far do you want to take this?" I think about the question carefully. Part of me wants to burn it all down to pursue maximum penalties for everyone who hurt me. But that impulse comes from anger, and I've learned over these past weeks that anger makes poor decisions. I want accountability, I say slowly. Real consequences that they can't escape or minimize. What does that look like legally? Jeffrey pulls out a legal pad and starts outlining options. For Mark, we file a civil suit for theft of trade secrets and tortious interference with business relationships. The evidence of him receiving confidential client information from Veronica is damning. Separately, the FBI's criminal case against him continues. Between civil and criminal penalties, he's looking at massive fines and potential prison time. And Veronica? She's already facing criminal charges for conspiracy to commit identity theft. We could add civil charges for the damages her actions caused to your career, lost clients, damaged reputation, missed opportunities. She'd be liable for hundreds of thousands in restitution beyond what the criminal court already ordered. The numbers are staggering. The consequences are severe. And yet I know that without them, nothing will change. Veronica will find another scheme, another shortcut, another way to avoid genuine responsibility. Mark will target another victim, refine his methods, continue his network. File everything I say. Civil suits against both Mark and Veronica. Let them face the full weight of what they've done. Jeffrey nods, unsurprised. I'll have the paperwork ready by tomorrow. But Felicia, you should know that your family is going to fight this. They'll try every manipulation tactic they know to make you back down. I know. 2 days later, Agent Rodriguez calls with an update. We've been building our case against Ellison for 18 months, he tells me. We knew he was running fraud schemes, but we couldn't connect enough dots to prosecute. Your evidence changed everything. The text messages with your sister, the security footage, the financial records, it filled gaps we couldn't close on our own. What happens now? He's facing federal charges for wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy, and theft of trade secrets. Felicia, this isn't a slap on the wrist. If convicted, he's looking at 15 to 20 years in federal prison and fines in the millions. A ton. The severity of it takes my breath away. 20 years. A significant portion of Mark's life gone. But then I remember the other victims Rodriguez mentioned, the women whose lives Mark destroyed before he targeted me. I think about how many more victims there would have been if I hadn't stopped him. And Veronica, I ask. Your sister is in a difficult position, Rodriguez says carefully. She genuinely seems to have been manipulated by Ellison, but she still committed serious crimes. Her cooperation could reduce her sentence significantly, but she's not innocent. The naivety doesn't absolve guilt. That evening, I'm working from home when my phone rings repeatedly. First my mother, then my father, then Veronica. I let them all go to voicemail. When I finally listen to the messages, they're variations on the same theme. Please withdraw the lawsuits. My mother begs, her voice thick with tears. You're destroying this family. Everything that's happening to Veronica is too much already. Having civil charges on top of criminal ones will ruin her completely. My father's message is more measured but equally desperate. Sweetheart, I understand you're angry. You have every right to be. But adding more legal action on top of everything else, it feels like you're trying to punish rather than seek justice. Can we talk about this? Please. Veronica's message is the most raw. Felicia, I'm trying. I'm really trying to be better. But if you file civil suits against me on top of everything else, I'll lose any chance of rebuilding my life. Please don't do this. Please. Each message is designed to trigger my guilt, to make me feel like I'm the one being cruel and vindictive. It's the same manipulation they've used for decades, just repackaged for the current situation. I don't call any of them back. Instead, I call Jeffrey and confirm, file everything. Every lawsuit, every charge, every legal action we discussed. I'm done negotiating with people who've spent years stealing from me. Your family won't take this well, Jeffrey warns. I know, but for the first time in my life, I'm choosing my own welfare over their comfort. And if that makes me the villain in their story, I can live with that. Jeffrey files the civil lawsuits the next day. Mark Ellison is served papers at his attorney's office where he's been preparing his defense for the criminal charges. Veronica is served at my parents' house where she's been staying since her apartment lease ended. The reaction is immediate and explosive. My mother calls me sobbing, accusing me of trying to destroy Veronica's life. My father sends a long email explaining all the reasons why pursuing civil damages is excessive and vindictive. Even Veronica, who'd been trying to comply with my conditions, sends a text saying she doesn't understand how I can be so cruel. But I don't respond to any of them. I've said what needs to be said. The legal system will do the rest. 3 days after the civil suits are filed, I receive an email from an unfamiliar address. The subject line reads, "Final warning." I almost delete it as spam, but something makes me open it. The message is short and threatening. Felicia, if you continue down this path, I will expose everything. Every secret, every detail, every piece of information I have about you and your family. You think you've won, but you have no idea what I'm capable of. Withdraw the lawsuits or face consequences you can't imagine. This is your last chance. M. Mark Ellison is threatening me. Despite being under federal investigation, despite facing criminal charges, despite having his entire scheme exposed, he still thinks he has power over me. I forward the email to both Jeffrey and Agent Rodriguez with a single line, "He just made this worse for himself." Rodriguez calls back within minutes. "Witness intimidation and extortion. We can add those charges to his indictment. Mark Ellison just handed us more evidence of his criminal mindset." Good, I say, and I mean it, because I'm done being afraid of men who think threats will make me back down. I'm done letting manipulators control my choices. And I'm definitely done protecting people who've spent years hurting me. Mark wanted to expose everything, let him try. The only secrets left are his own. Mark's counterattack comes exactly 48 hours after his threatening email. The fabricated documents appear on financial industry blogs simultaneously, a coordinated release designed for maximum damage. They're sophisticated forgeries, doctored emails supposedly showing me engaging in insider trading falsified transaction records, suggesting I misappropriated client funds, even fake whistleblower testimonies from anonymous sources, claiming I've been running fraudulent schemes for years. For about 6 hours, the scandal dominates industry social media. My phone explodes with messages from colleagues asking if the allegations are true. I watch my professional reputation built carefully over 15 years come under assault from lies packaged as truth. But I've been preparing for exactly this scenario since the moment I learned Mark was involved. Margaret and our crisis team have counter-evidence ready before most people even finish reading the fabricated documents. Within 8 hours, we publish a comprehensive forensic analysis showing how the documents were doctored. The metadata reveals they were created days ago, not years ago, as claimed. Email headers don't match legitimate company servers. Transaction timestamps contain impossibilities, trades supposedly executed on holidays when markets were closed. The fabrications are sophisticated enough to fool casual observers, but fall apart under expert scrutiny. We also release 15 years of independently audited financial records testimonials from every client I've ever worked with and verification from forensic accountants that my practices have always been transparent and ethical. The contrast between Mark's desperate lies and my documented integrity is stark. The business community's response is swift and brutal, but not toward me. By the end of the day, 3 major clients have publicly announced they're severing all ties with Crestmont Capital specifically because of Mark's involvement. 2 financial industry associations issue statements condemning the fabricated documents and calling for Mark's immediate resignation from any leadership positions. I watch his professional world collapse in real time. Board positions quietly rescinded, speaking engagements canceled, partnership offers withdrawn. The man who tried to destroy my reputation through lies ends up destroying his own through the obviousness of his deception. What surprises me is how my reputation actually strengthens through this conflict. Colleagues who might have had doubts now see me as someone who fights back intelligently, who doesn't crumble under pressure, who defeats smear campaigns with facts rather than emotions. Several executives I've competed with for years send messages of support acknowledging that Mark's tactics could have been used against any of them. Margaret suggests we go further. "You have an opportunity here," she says, "to tell your story publicly, to talk about family financial abuse and the double standards women face. The media wants to interview you. This is your chance to control the narrative." I agree to 1 interview with a respected business journalist known for in-depth profiles. The article that results is titled, "The Silent Epidemic: Family Financial Abuse and Professional Women." I speak openly about being judged for not marrying while simultaneously being exploited by family members who saw my success as their entitlement. I discuss the psychological manipulation that makes victims feel guilty for setting boundaries. The response is overwhelming. Within 24 hours, the article has been shared hundreds of thousands of times. My inbox floods with messages from women, executives, managers, professionals across every industry telling variations of the same story. Parents who stole from them, siblings who exploited them, extended family who treated their success as communal property. "I thought I was the only one," reads one message from a doctor in Seattle. "My brother took out loans in my name for 10 years. I never told anyone because I was ashamed. My parents told me I owed them for raising me," writes a lawyer from Chicago. "They made me feel guilty every time I tried to say no. Reading your story made me realize I wasn't crazy. I've accidentally become a spokesperson for something much larger than my personal experience. The cultural silence around family financial abuse is breaking, and women are finally saying out loud what they've endured privately." 3 days after my interview publishes, Agent Rodriguez calls. "Mark Ellison has been formally arrested," he says, and I hear satisfaction in his voice. "All charges: wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy theft of trade secrets, witness intimidation, and extortion. The grand jury indicted him this morning. He's being held without bail pending trial. How long is he facing? If convicted on all counts, 15 to 20 years in federal prison, plus millions in fines and restitution to victims." Rodriguez pauses. "Your documentation and your willingness to testify made this possible. Most victims of financial fraud don't fight back this hard. They let shame silence them. You didn't. And because you didn't, we caught him before he could destroy more lives." I sit with that information feeling a complex mix of vindication and exhaustion. 20 years of Mark's life potentially gone, his career destroyed, his freedom taken. And while I didn't create this outcome, he did through his own choices. I'm the one who stopped him. "Thank you," I say to Rodriguez, "for taking this seriously, for believing me. Thank you for having the courage to report it. Most people don't." After we hang up, I sit in my apartment and finally allow myself to feel the full weight of everything that's happened. The betrayal, the exploitation, the legal battles, all of it. For the first time in months, I cry not from sadness or anger, but from relief. It's over. The man who tried to destroy me is in custody. My family is facing consequences. And I'm still standing. 2 weeks after Mark's arrest, my father calls and asks if we can meet for coffee. Not at my parents' house, not somewhere that carries the weight of family history, but at a neutral cafe where we can talk as two adults, rather than parent and child. He looks older when I arrive, worn down by shame and consequence. But there's also something different in his posture, a straightness that wasn't there before, like he's finally stopped carrying a burden he should have set down years ago. Your mother and I have been in therapy, he begins without preamble. Individual and couples counseling. The therapist has helped me see things I should have recognized decades ago. He wraps his hands around his coffee cup as if seeking warmth. I measured your worth by whether you had a husband and children. I treated marriage as the only legitimate accomplishment for a woman, and in doing that, I diminished everything you actually achieved. The apology is specific, detailed, acknowledging particular harms, rather than offering vague regret. It matters. Your mother is working through her own issues, he continues. The jealousy, the resentment, the way she turned traditional values into weapons against you. She knows the apologies she gave before weren't enough. She's learning to understand what she actually did, not just what she told herself she was doing. And Veronica. A small smile crosses his face. Your sister is changing. Slowly, painfully, but changing. You should see her. 3 days later, Veronica meets me at a restaurant for lunch. She's dressed simply, no designer clothes, no expensive accessories. She looks younger without the armor of luxury brands, more vulnerable, but also more real. I got a job, she says, and there's pride in her voice mixed with embarrassment. Office administrator at a dental practice. It's entry level, the pay is terrible, and I'm the oldest person in the office who isn't management. But it's mine. I earned it. She pulls out her phone and shows me a photo of her first paycheck. $783 for 2 weeks of work, less than she used to spend on a single handbag. It's not much, she says. But when I deposited it, I felt something I've never felt before. Pride. Real pride, not the fake kind that comes from showing off things other people paid for. She's been in therapy for 5 weeks now, attending sessions twice a week. She's learning about codependency, about how being enabled by our parents created a warped understanding of self-worth. She's learning that independence is harder than dependence, but ultimately more sustainable. I'm not asking for forgiveness, she says. I know I don't deserve it yet. Maybe I never will. But I wanted you to know that I'm trying, really trying. As we're finishing lunch, my father calls. Felicia, there's something else I need to tell you. Something I should have told you years ago. Can you come to the house? When I arrive, both my parents are waiting, but there's someone else too. A woman I don't recognize standing awkwardly in the living room. She's maybe 40 with dark hair and eyes that look startlingly familiar. Felicia, my father says, his voice unsteady. This is Claire, your half-sister, my daughter from before I married your mother. The revelation takes a moment to process. I have a sister. Not Veronica, or not only Veronica, but someone else. Someone I never knew existed. Claire steps forward, tentative. I know this is a shock. I've known about you for years, but Dad wanted to keep us separate. He thought your mom would make things difficult if she knew I existed. I visited Claire monthly, my father explains. I never stopped being part of her life, even though I kept it secret. And I told her about you, about your successes, your struggles, how strong you were despite everything. Claire smiles, and it transforms her face. He called you his secret pride. He couldn't brag about you to your mother or to friends because it would threaten the family dynamics, but he told me everything. I've followed your career from a distance. I have newspaper clippings about your promotions. I know how brilliant you are, and I've always wanted to meet you. We talk for 2 hours about her life as a teacher, about growing up with our father visiting, but never fully present, about watching me from afar and wishing we could be sisters in reality instead of just biology. By the end, I realize I've found something I didn't know I was missing: a family member who sees me clearly without agenda or exploitation. That evening back at my apartment, I find an envelope that was delivered while I was gone. There's no return address, just my name written in careful handwriting. Inside is a letter from a woman named Dorothy Carmichael in Maine. She writes about how her son received medical treatment funded by a charitable program my company sponsored 5 years ago. Treatment that saved his life. "You have no children of your own," she writes, "but you saved my son. You saved my family. You are a mother to people you've never met, a hero to families who will never know your name. Your worth isn't measured by wedding rings or birth certificates. It's measured by the lives you've touched, the good you've done, the strength you've shown. Thank you for existing. Thank you for being exactly who you are." I read the letter 3 times, and by the 3rd time, tears are streaming down my face. But they're not tears of pain. They're tears of validation, of recognition, of finally understanding that I was never the failure my family made me feel like. I was always enough. I just needed to escape their toxicity to see it. Dorothy's letter sits on my desk for 3 days before I receive another unexpected call. This one is from the National Women's Financial Empowerment Conference, asking if I'd be willing to speak at their annual gathering in Chicago next month. "Your story has resonated with so many women," the organizer tells me. "We'd like you to share your experience with financial family abuse and how you overcame it. Our audience is primarily professional women over 50 who are navigating similar challenges." I accept without hesitation. If my pain can help even one woman recognize she's not alone, it's worth the vulnerability of speaking publicly. The conference takes place in a massive hotel ballroom filled with over 3,000 women. As I stand backstage waiting to go on, I feel my hands trembling. I've given presentations to boardrooms full of executives negotiated million-dollar deals, but this feels different, more personal, more important. When I walk onto the stage, the sea of faces looking back at me could be my story multiplied 1,000 times. Women who've sacrificed, who've been taken for granted, who've been told their worth is measured by rings and babies rather than character and accomplishment. I speak for 30 minutes about financial abuse within families, about the exploitation disguised as obligation, about the guilt weaponized to keep victims silent. I don't name my family, but I tell the truth about what happened: the theft, the manipulation, the years of trying to earn love from people fundamentally incapable of giving it. Society tells us that family comes first, I say near the end. But what they don't tell us is that sometimes choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's survival, and sometimes the people who share your blood are the ones you need to protect yourself from most. The standing ovation begins before I finish speaking. Women rise from their seats, clapping with a ferocity that feels like release. Many are crying openly, recognizing their own stories in mine. A woman in the 3rd row holds a sign that reads, "Me too, my sister stole $80K. Another woman mouths, "Thank you," with tears streaming down her face. After the speech, I'm surrounded by women wanting to share their stories. A doctor whose parents drained her retirement accounts. A lawyer whose brother used her identity to buy a house. An accountant whose adult children treated her like an ATM while criticizing her for not being traditional enough. Story after story, each one a variation on the same theme of exploitation disguised as family obligation. An elderly woman with silver hair approaches me last after the crowd has thinned. She doesn't speak, just hands me an envelope and squeezes my hand before walking away. Inside the envelope is another letter, this one from the same Dorothy Carmichael who'd written before. But this letter is different. "Dear Ms. Hart," it begins. "I wrote to you weeks ago, but I needed to come here in person to see the woman who saved my son. You won't remember this, but 5 years ago, your company's charitable foundation funded an experimental cancer treatment for children whose families couldn't afford it. My son James was one of those children. He was 8 years old and dying. The treatment saved his life. He's 13 now, healthy, playing baseball, dreaming of becoming a doctor. The letter continues. When I read about what your family did to you, about how they called you a failure for not having children, I wept. Because you have no children of your own, but you are a mother to my son. You are a mother to the hundreds of children whose lives were saved by your foundation's work. You are a mother to the women in this room who finally feel seen because you had the courage to speak. Your worth isn't measured by wedding rings or birth certificates. It's measured by the lives you've touched, the good you've done, the strength you've shown. I read the letter standing in the empty ballroom, tears streaming down my face. All those years, my family made me feel worthless because I didn't conform to their definition of success. All those judgments, those criticisms, those dismissals. And I never knew that while they were tearing me down, I was saving lives. I was making a difference in ways they couldn't comprehend because they measured value in the narrowest possible terms. When I return home that evening, exhausted but lighter, somehow there's a small package waiting outside my apartment door. Inside is $500 in cash and a note in Veronica's handwriting. This is my first payment toward what I owe you. It's from my paycheck money I actually earned. I know it will take years to repay everything, maybe 10 years or more. But I'm committed to doing it. Thank you for not giving up on me completely. Thank you for showing me what accountability actually means. I'm sorry for everything. V. I hold the cash and the note, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I smiled genuinely. Not because of the money. $500 barely makes a dent in what was stolen. I smile because Veronica is finally taking responsibility. She's learning that actions have consequences, that change requires sustained effort, that real growth is painful and slow, but ultimately possible. Change is happening. Not just in Veronica, but in my parents too. In me. In the way I understand family and obligation and self-worth. I walk to my apartment window and look out at the sunset painting the Boston skyline in shades of orange and gold. Somewhere in this city, Mark Ellison sits in a jail cell awaiting trial. Somewhere my mother is learning to face the jealousy that drove her to steal from her own daughter. Somewhere Veronica is coming home from her humble job, tired but proud of honest work. And I'm here finally, free, finally whole, finally understanding that the final chapter of my life isn't an ending, it's a beginning. The standing ovation lasts 3 full minutes. Women are crying openly, reaching for tissues, embracing strangers who understand their pain. I stand at the podium watching this wave of recognition and validation wash over an entire room of people who thought they were alone in their experiences. In the months that follow, my life transforms in ways I never anticipated. The conference speech goes viral, online excerpts shared millions of times across social media platforms. My inbox overflows with messages from women around the world, executives in London, teachers in rural America, doctors in Australia, all telling variations of the same story about family exploitation and the courage it took to finally say no. I'm invited to speak at 3 more conferences. Business publications feature me not just as a CFO, but as an advocate for financial independence and boundary setting. The book offers start-arriving publishers want me to write about my experience, to turn my story into something that might help others recognize and escape similar situations. My relationship with my parents settles into something manageable, if not warm. They live in the house I own, paying rent consistently for the first time in their lives. My father has filed for divorce, though my mother is contesting it. They attend therapy separately and occasionally together. I visit once a month, brief check-ins that feel more like landlord inspections than family gatherings. But I've set boundaries that I maintain without guilt. I will help if there's a genuine emergency, a medical crisis, a true disaster. But I will never again fund their lifestyle, bail them out of self-created problems, or accept responsibility for choices they make as adults. The relationship exists, but it's fundamentally different now. Built on reality rather than fantasy, on mutual respect rather than exploitation. Veronica has kept her promises. For 4 months now, she's maintained her job, attended therapy twice weekly, and sent regular payments toward her restitution. The amounts are small, $50 here, $100 there, but they're consistent. She sends them with brief notes that track her progress, her struggles, her small victories. Got promoted to senior administrator, one note reads. 25-cent raise. I cried when they told me because I earned it myself. I find myself cautiously hopeful about Veronica in a way I never expected. She's learning what the rest of the world knew all along: independence is hard, but it's real. She's building self-worth that doesn't come from men or manipulation, discovering that earning your own way, however modest, brings dignity that borrowed luxury never could. 2 months after the Chicago conference, Claire and I meet for coffee at a small cafe in Boston's Back Bay. She brings a photo album filled with pictures I've never seen: our father at her college graduation, at her wedding, holding her children, visiting on birthdays and holidays, while maintaining the fiction that she didn't exist. He loved you, she tells me, flipping through decades of secret relationship. He talked about you constantly, your achievements, your strength, how proud he was, even though he couldn't say it out loud. He called you his secret pride. We discover we share the same dry humor, the same habit of organizing thoughts on paper before speaking, the same tendency to overthink decisions. She tells me about her life as a high school English teacher, her 2 teenage sons, her husband who teaches music. Her life is ordinary and beautiful, built on honesty rather than secrets. I always wanted to meet you, she says, her eyes bright with emotion. But Dad said your mother would make everyone's life hell if she knew I existed. He was protecting both of us from her toxicity. Now we don't have to hide anymore. For the first time, I have a family member who sees me clearly without agenda, who celebrates my success without jealousy, who understands that family isn't just biology, it's people who choose to see your worth without exploiting it. 3 months later, I close on a small house by a lake in New Hampshire. It's 2 hours from Boston, far enough for distance, but close enough for Claire to visit. The house is modest by my means: 3 bedrooms, a deck overlooking the water, surrounded by trees that will turn spectacular colors come autumn. I furnish it slowly, deliberately, choosing each piece myself rather than having someone else decorate. I set up a home office where I can work remotely, and in the smallest bedroom I create a writing space. Because I've decided to write my story not just for the book publishers who keep calling, but for myself. To process everything that happened. To document the truth before time softens its edges. David visits every weekend, and we've set a new wedding date for next spring. A small ceremony by the lake, just close friends and Claire's family. My parents won't be invited. Veronica might be if she continues her progress. On my first morning in the new house, I wake to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows. I make coffee and sit on the deck, watching mist rise from the lake as the world comes alive around me. For the first time in 37 years, I have nothing I have to do, nowhere I have to be, no one I have to please or support or rescue. I'm finally completely free. She had spent 37 years being the person everyone needed. Now at last, she was free to become the person she'd always deserved to be, and the journey ahead was entirely hers.